All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fight. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we are going to be going over each and every fight from UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov, taking a look at UFC 312. That is Plessis versus Strickland 2. And to do all of that, as always, with me, my name is Thinker St. James, by the way, and with me to do all of those things is my co-host, the Ohio player, and a man whose aura never fades, Mr. Chase Parton. How are you, sir?
You know, I am feeling it right now. I can't wait to get into everything that happened on the weekend. I'm telling you, I know we didn't ask yet, but this was a pretty solid card. So
yeah, not bad, not bad. I mean, I think that it was a little up and down at times, but we'll certainly get into it in due time here, of course. If you are hanging with us in the chat, we appreciate that very much. Make sure you like this stream, and that also helps us out a lot. But if you are hanging with us and want to give us any comments on these fights, we'll be going over each and every one of these fights. So you can throw those chats in the chat. You can throw your comments in there. And if it is anything pertaining to something else outside of what we're talking about at the moment with the fights that we are on, we'll come back to that at a later time in the stream. But to start this thing off, as I said, this is a UFC Fight Night. Adesanya versus Imavov. This took place at the ANB Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This arena was empty at the start of this thing. Somewhat of a low-energy crowd, I would say, out in Saudi Arabia. What did you think?
well, it wasn't just empty, but I don't know if you noticed how small the venue was. There wasn't an upper deck of seats. Like, it was just there was, the floor level, and then it went up to one level, and then above that was just like skybox seats for just like, the actual rich people kind of deal. And I don't know. So for some reason, though, after a while, it wasn't too bad. I think it kind of figured itself out, even though being a small venue. But at first, man, you could tell that it was empty, and not too many people could be there. So
Right. Yeah. No, you're definitely right. It is a smaller venue. Period. Like it's a on the smaller side as far as capacity goes. But by the end, you could hear the crowd a little bit. They were cheering and chanting and stuff, occasionally booing, but we'll get into that. Right. It was just when they first started, because it was another one of those cards where I guess there were one or two that dropped out. So we had a little bit of a lead up going into the first fight. And when they're standing there doing like the intros and stuff and a couple of the crowd shots, the walkouts and stuff like that, it was like, man, this is really, really empty. Very, very few patches of people in there. It finally did kind of fill out, but just an interesting note, because you'd think that out in Saudi Arabia, where they're pumping a lot of resources, a lot of money into this sport, that it would show in the desire of the people who are able to attend, that there'd be a fervor for wanting to be there and taking in the fights as much as the event as they can, that kind of stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't want to show up for my boy Hamdi, but we'll get into that. And I don't know. I think it was just really crazy how small, like there just wasn't a lot of seats in the building. It was actually kind of crazy. It was like a smaller promotion type deal. It kind of felt a little homely when it was just the security guards and shit standing around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it must have been a nice, like, kind of intimate environment for the people who were there. So get right up close and personal with the fights. That's something to be said for that. I mean, especially now when you've got these fights taking place at these huge, huge venues. Where, I mean, I know that a couple of the places that I've seen it at, you can get pretty high up into the rafters, and once you're up there, you're really struggling to be able to actually see down into the action itself. A lot of times you're watching the jumbotron, and that's, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that, because it's like you're paying all this money to be there to see it live, and then you're essentially watching it on a big TV. So that's a little bit. I don't know. It's not necessarily the experience I would want, but so these people in Saudi Arabia, good for you. You get to see everything up close and personal.
Well, I just think it's crucial to note also, because it is a partner in the brand, is when you compare this to what the Royal Rumble had, and wow, that venue was the largest thing I've ever seen type deal.
Where would
Indianapolis. It was in the Colt Stadium, I think,
Oh,
maybe.
all right.
So I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But compared to that, it kind of had an impact to me. Like, wow, the UFC really just had like 500 people watch this fucking event. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the actual capacity of the place was, but it was certainly on the smaller side. Either way, the crowd got a decent show out of it. So I guess let's jump on into these fights proper over here.
One last thing I actually
Yeah.
want to note, it's pretty crazy to even think that the venue's so small and they saved Israel Adesanya for it. Like,
Yeah, well, and we'll get into that. We talked a little bit about 312 on a previous episode, but of course that is coming up this weekend. So we'll get into that aspect of things a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, it is a little bit strange how they've decided these cards, at least within this last couple here, as to what people are fighting on what cards and why. Um, I mean, I guess Imavov makes sense for this venue and this environment, but I mean, you had 312 for that, and so I don't know. I mean, there were plenty of fighters on here. Well, I don't know. I guess actually, if you really think about it, it wasn't necessarily the most like stacked with fighters of the region, culturally similar fighters necessarily. So there were a couple, but yeah, a little bit odd. Odd that this was the lineup specifically for Saudi Arabia.
yeah, I agree. But hey, it is what it is. We'll get into the first one because I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. Yeah, thinking about that now, that point it is interesting that there weren't more fighters, regionally significant fighters
Mhm.
on this one, but there were a couple. So yeah, anyway, whatever. Let's get into it. So yeah, starting this thing off is Hamdi Abdul Wahab versus Jamal Pogues. What'd you think?
Um, all week, I don't know what it was, guys. I just knew it. They were speaking to me. The MMA gods were speaking to me, and I knew that my boy Hamdi was going to get it done because Jamal Pogues, like, even knowing he's on his last, even if you didn't know that he's on his last fight of his contract and he's walking out crying and then he gets beat up for 3 rounds. In my opinion, everybody wants to claim that I'm biased because I had, quote unquote currency down, but I I think this was an easy one for Hamdi. And just to prove how easy it was, let me go ahead and give you guys a little tidbit.
Uh-oh.
I had to get my boy's flag.
Hey,
I actually didn't know it
Egypt in
had
the
something
building.
on it. I thought it was just interesting. But either way, so he's going up. And my boy Hamdi is the man for his performance. I don't care what anybody says. Had Jamal Pogues leaving crying. So that's all I got to say.
Well, all right, fair enough. I mean, congratulations on getting a little bit of cash out of it, but this was certainly at the very least a petty theft, I would say. I mean, Pogues was, I mean, really, you say that this was not exactly a barn burner fight to begin with. A little bit of a slow start to this card, which Slightly unfortunate in the sense that being that this was taking place in Saudi Arabia, we were on the Saudi Arabian schedule, so it was earlier in the day as opposed to the normal schedule for the United States. So 9 o'clock in the morning, everybody's kind of just getting into the day. They got their coffee and all that kind of stuff, getting ready for these fights. And this is the first fight that they got. Not necessarily the way that you want to start the show off. No fireworks necessarily, but to break it down a little bit here, I mean, I would say, yeah, that it was certainly uh, not the decision that I would have gone with. It ended up being a split decision for Abdel Wahab, with one of them being with the split being a 30-27 for Pogues. So that kind of goes to show just how wonky that judging was on this one. It was some decent wrestling from Hamdi early in the fight, a few decent hands from Jamal in the second round, but the round was slow overall. So I had it 1-1 going into the third, and then I just thought in the third Jamal did a decent amount comparatively. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of output on either side. And then there was that one moment at the very end where they were like, kind of trying to bait each other into standing and banging, and neither of them did. So it was like,
Yeah.
kind of weird. But I thought Jamal did enough in that third round to take it. I thought his striking was better overall in that round. So yeah, I mean, it was, I think, an unfortunate decision, and definitely, as Chase said, it was unfortunate that Jamal Pogues ended up getting cut after this fight. I didn't realize it was his last fight on his contract, but you could tell him walking out with some tears in his eyes. Apparently, he went to the PI to work on the mental side of the game, as well as like changing up his training and stuff a little bit. So obviously, there's some stuff going on there with him. So I kind of felt bad for the guy in that regard. It was not the worst performance I've ever seen in my life, but he didn't get
There's
the
a worse
nod.
one later. We'll talk about it.
Right? Yeah, for sure. But yeah, he didn't get the nod, and then ended up getting cut. I thought it was unfortunate end there. And then the only other note that I did have was that it was pretty funny to me that Hamdi Abdel Wahab, who is a known steroid dirty cheater, shouts out George Piro in his post fight, which, if you know, George Piro is the head of the UFC's anti-doping program. So I guess
Nice.
he got himself right with Mr. Piro, and is on the straight and narrow now. So at least that part is taken care of. But I did think that was funny.
Yeah, I think Hamdi really, whether you guys believe that he actually won or not, you can't deny that he looked really impressive, especially in the first round. I know later on they gassed, but his wrestling, holy shit, he can move on the mat. Like he had him in a headlock in one position, and then he swooped around and got his back, and it was like the fastest I've ever seen a heavyweight move. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
I agree with that definitely. That he's agile for a big guy for sure, and he's an Olympic wrestler, so I that certainly showed. Would have liked to have seen more of it. Honestly, I don't know if it was a tank issue or why he didn't go back to that a little bit more when he was having success with it. But yeah, he definitely is skilled in that department. And I'm not mad that he got the win necessarily. I don't think it was the right call, but it wasn't like it wasn't so bad that, like I said, petty theft. It was not a complete robbery. Like it wasn't like so glaring of a bad call that it was like holy shit. But yeah, I just think that it was unfortunate because of all those circumstances that I just laid out.
I also want to make a note on the fact that Dana cut Pogues and another fighter that we'll talk about later. And I really believe that he is just calling our bluffs, because after every one of these, horrible fights or fights that aren't great or whatever you want to say, and you go to Twitter, it's everybody saying you got to cut them, you got to get rid of them, they need to retire, they suck, blah 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 blah. Well, I think Dana really is just going for it at this point. He's like, all right, well, if you guys don't like him, we're going to cut him and we'll see what we got left and go from there. Like he cleaned house pretty. Last week he mopped 5 people out. This week we get another 2. who knows what's coming? Like he really is just on it right now.
For sure. I mean, I thought that this round of cuts was slightly interesting because both of the fighters that were cut are in the heavyweight division. And we constantly are talking about how heavyweight is such a shallow talent pool right now. So I was like, kind of the comment that I had said when we were discussing it in the Discord was I was like, I thought it was kind of crazy that you're cutting two heavyweights that are, I mean, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily champ potential, but they're fine heavyweights. I mean, they're not, like people are like demanding get cut. I never heard anybody saying, man, Jamal Pogues needs to be cut. Fuck that guy kind of thing. I mean, maybe some people were, but
you got to go to Twitter, man. Right
well,
after them fights,
fair,
man, you'll see it. You'll see it.
Yeah, I guess it's a good point. But either way, I mean, like, at least in my estimation, it wasn't like two ridiculously like unskilled heavyweights that like needed to be cut so badly. But the other side of that is that because heavyweight is so light, you're not backfilling it with new heavyweights that like are taking those spots just yet, or maybe you're trying to. I guess maybe that's the intention here, is to try to bring in new heavyweight talent, but that needs to happen because the last time that we saw a heavyweight that was trying to get kind of boosted up in order to take the slots of some of these other guys, that was
Shamil Gaziev.
Well, Shamil Gaziev, but I was thinking of God, I just had his name on the tip of my tongue. The dude who fought Marcin Tybura.
Jonathan
Deniz. That's exactly who it was. Yeah, there you go. And we saw what happened to him. I mean, he kind of got shot up a little bit, perhaps a little bit too quickly, but so yeah, my point in all of that is just that you have these heavyweights that are getting cut. You want to think that they're getting filled, backfilled with new guys that are going to be better, but that's not necessarily what's shaken out just yet. So interesting times that we're seeing in heavyweight.
I actually will bring it up now, and we'll come back to it. But I want to say that Jamal Pogues, if he's really about his business right now, he needs to make a claim that when he was walking out, the fumes were making him teary-eyed, and that's how bad it was. And they need to do a lawsuit or something for his loss or get it overturned, because Terrence McKinney went on Ariel's show and talked about how the locker rooms were freshly painted in that arena, and that's where they were warming up and stuff, and it had a lot of fighters having some poor performances, and they were contributing it to that. So Jamal Pogues, you better jump right on it, brother, right here. Get your loss overturned. I know you were crying for maybe other reasons, but just milk it, dude. Just be like, bro, my eyes were burning back there. I couldn't fight properly. Fuck it.
Yeah, well, so I mean, since you brought it up now, I mean, we're gonna save it for a little bit later. But since you brought it up, I do have the clip here of Terrence McKinney talking about that, and I have not heard this. So
I actually didn't either. So this will be good.
All right, yeah. Let's let Terrence McKinney tell us what's going on here, because as you can see, basically, if you're watching, if you're just listening, Terrence McKinney talks about the newly painted locker rooms in the A&B arena on the Ariel Helwani show. So let's hear what Terrence has to say about this situation here.
Plus, like, we were in the back huffing paint. Like,
oh, okay. So what happened here? Because I just asked MVP about it, and maybe he was in the bougie locker room, but I had heard from several people after who said they had a really hard time breathing, needed to go outside, were feeling nauseous about the painted locker rooms, newly painted locker rooms. You felt this?
Yeah, like I felt it a little bit too. Like, and I was like, like, and this is probably the best cardio I had like ever in any fight. Like, I've been running like 5 miles every other day. And no, I felt it like from the paint. Well, they did try to help us, like taking some of the ceiling off, but like I said, it affected Lucas breathing. Like, he had to go like the hospital like 2 times.
All right, wow.
And Mike Davis definitely was feeling it too. He told me so. Like, a lot of other fighters were feeling it too. So like, we weren't just the only ones. So.
And what's wrong with Lucas now?
I don't know what it affected his lungs. So he had to. I don't know what he had. All he had to do when he went to the doctor, but. I think he just started feeling normal, to be honest. Wow. And like the wind and the sand there really didn't help the breathing as well, I feel like.
Damn, that is crazy. And it was from the painted locker rooms, right?
Yeah, that's where it started. Because we were in there for like a few hours, like waiting for the event to start. So,
man, that is rough. I feel like I can't even imagine going through a fight 5-minute rounds and you have to deal with that beforehand, feeling nauseous, hard to breathe. That is serious stuff. And I know that arena is relatively new. But yeah, that is weird. That is really weird. But didn't affect you to the point where, the result didn't go your way.
All right. So there you go. And what McKinney's referencing there, I didn't realize this going into this, but McKinney and Lucas Alexander and also Mike Davis are all Fusion XL guys fighting out of Orlando. So they're all teammates over there. I guess they all traveled together, and he's saying that a couple of his guys and himself, Terrence McKinney, having some problems with the newly painted locker rooms there. That's an interesting note for all of this.
Yeah. So I think moral of the story, I think we might see some interesting things come out of this. I don't know exactly how many times weird things happen in the arena that are new and they're there and anything of the sort. But Jamal Pogues, man, if you want your opportunity right here, man, go ahead, get it. Fuck it.
Yeah, I guess that's certainly one way to make an appeal. We'll have to see what comes out of any of these, because a couple of those guys, my note, which going into this next fight makes sense to bring up now, is that Alexander, being one of those three guys from Fusion XL, there was only one out of those three that ended up getting the win, and that was Terrence McKinney. So obviously this paint situation, there may be some legitimacy to it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to note that Lucas Alexander is like actually suffering some lasting effects from it. I think that is also important to note that, it's not just people walking out the arena coughing. Like, this dude went to the hospital twice, is what he said. So that's interesting.
It's pretty heavy indeed. So, well, no, I mean, a good point to note now for these couple of these fights going forward. Perhaps all these fights going forward, depending on how it might have affected anybody else on the card. So moving. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, might give a little more context. I especially think that gives context for this next fight, because the drop off in cardio for him was pretty crazy.
Absolutely. So let's get into this next one. The next one is Bogdan Grad versus Lucas Alexander. I mean, really, I mean, looking at it in context now, you could certainly say that there did look like there might have been something off a little bit with Alexander. I didn't think that it was so glaring that it was noticeable. Like, if I hadn't known that, I wouldn't have thought, man, Alexander just looked like he was on another planet. That was for Mike Davis a little bit later on, but now having that context, it I guess you can kind of recontextualize the fight in that through that lens, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this fight was honestly, it was scary, because I had Hamdi and Bogdan Grad. Those were my guys that the gods were telling me about. And this first round, like you said, you would not be able to tell Lucas Alexander had any effect on his game, because he came out looking good, to the point where I was like, well, fuck, Bogdan Grad is cooked. Like, he's just getting beat up on the outside. He's not getting, any type of game set up. And then second round came, and, I'll do one more for you guys, because this is my fucking guy.
All right.
We got us an Austria flag. So
let's go.
This is actually a crazy flag, too.
Yeah, that is a crazy flag. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I like that flag.
So I really fuck with my boy Bogdan.
Even though he is Romanian, fighting out of Austria.
So. Fuck it. What can you do these days? Like MVP said, man, we're all one,
Yeah, and I very much appreciated that from MVP. But to your point, the grappling exchanges were not going Bogdan's way at first. Alexander was navigating those nicely in the first round, had Grad looking kind of sloppy at times there. Nice kicks and some hands from Lucas in the opening of the second as well. He wasn't looking terrible in this fight before the momentum shifted.
Yeah, and then, Bogdan Grad finally was able to just get him down, and he got right on top of him, right in mount. And it was, I think it took a little longer than it should have, because Bogdan Grad definitely was just teeing off on him. There was no chance he was getting up, type of deal. But maybe just in the moment, I felt it was taking a little longer, because I really needed Bogdan Grad to win right here. And it's crazy that he pulled this off.
Yeah, no, I feel you 100% on that because like on the watch along, I'm sitting there like, dude, get your hands going, go, go, go.
Mhm.
You know, I was like, but I think in hindsight, it was definitely the right approach because he really all the way that it went down, he just kind of took advantage of a feeler kick. It was like a push punch kind of deal that got Alexander to the ground, and then he just was patiently controlling in the mount, landing shots here and there and tiring Alexander out continuously to the point where it finally did pay off and he was able to finish off the fight that way. So I mean, you know, yeah, I was definitely with you in the moment, but like looking at it back, especially on rewatch, I was like, you know, take your time. You got plenty of time. It wasn't like he was coming up on time as far as the clock was concerned, because you know he was out in open water and really just making sure he followed the motions. And I think that that's really something that if he had been a little bit quicker to the draw, he might have gotten into a situation where Alexander could have gotten out of the, you know, the gotten off the ground, and then he wouldn't have gotten the finish. So, you know, sometimes that's the better way, is slow and steady.
Yeah, Bogdan Grad, you know, honestly, looking at the record, he's coming into this. This is his debut, yeah.
Yes, yeah, in the
Yeah,
organization, yeah.
you know, 15-2. I mean, he's kind of up there, a little experienced, and he really used that to his advantage. You know, that first round did not go his way, but the second round, he was just able to use you know, he won with his heart, really. Like, and that's what we saw in the Contender Series. Like, he went straight to the bell, and he was not going to stop. And it really showed in this performance that he's got that dog in him. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, it's one of those things we talk about it a good amount with the Contender Series guys, where it's like coming into the organization, it's a whole different ball game from what they're used to outside of the organization and even on the Contender Series. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag when these guys are coming in for their first fight in the big show proper. And you never really know what you're going to get. Some guys who look amazing on the Contender Series can end up, you know, completely having an off night when they're you know, under the big lights. So it was good to see Grod pull it off because, as we had talked about on the last episode when we were kind of breaking these fights down, giving predictions, Grod had a really, really good fight on the Contender Series. It was one that stuck out. The commentary team was saying it was one of the best fights on the Contender Series. I definitely thought it was an all-out war. It showed that the guy has some legitimate heart. So it was good to see that translate into the actual UFC proper.
Yeah, and what Anakin is saying in the chat here is, you know, Lucas Alexander did miss weight. And after I didn't catch the weigh-ins this week, but when they made that note on the commentary, I was really worried for Bogdan. And I thought that first round, the grappling wasn't going his way because, you know, he didn't have them extra weights. Like, this was a bad weight miss. Like, this was like 4 or 5 pounds or something like that. But then, you know, I guess it was just a really bad cut for him. You know, didn't seem like him purposely missing because he gassed out, you know, like he was the one that ended up losing in that regard. So
for sure. Yeah. And while we are on the subject, shout out to everybody in the chat. We have Vitz King, Checkmate Entertainment checking in, Realize, and Anakin as well. Thank you guys for rocking with us. Appreciate all y'all.
Yeah, the boys are back in town for
absolutely. Real. So, yeah, I mean, all in all, you know, good work for Grod, and nice to see that he gets his win. And because he had fought twice on the Contender Series. That last one was his second go around. So, you know, another example of a dude who maybe needed a little bit more time outside to get everything clicking, and it paid off. So good to see that he did everything that he needed to do, and now hopefully a new force at lightweight.
Yeah, I was about to say lightweight. No, anyway, but
my bad.
Yeah, no, this was a good one. I really enjoyed this. I thought as of right now, the card is going great. Like, this is a high point because we are rolling. But this next one.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get into the next one. This is Jasmine Jazz Davicius versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Interesting note before we get into the fight proper is the fact that this was the first women's UFC fight in Saudi Arabia. So kind of neat there. But the PFL had them beat as far as women's fights, period, because there was a women's fight on the MENA card late last year. So, you know, but either way, nice to see Saudi Arabia coming around to women's competition when it comes to combat sports.
I actually will note also, everybody wanted to make a big deal of what they were going to wear. And I kind of figured it was just going to be the same thing that MBS always wears. She always wears the shirt with the skirt. Now, Jasmine, she did throw the tank top on, which is, I feel like I haven't seen the tank top too much, you know. Feel like it's just the t-shirt option. So maybe that was a new thing they offered for her in this regard. But what I will say is MBS, there's no hope. She absolutely is just off the wagon because she went down a weight class for this, you know, presumably to get an advantage, be bigger, get a win in the book, you know, and go back to her normal weight division and have, you know, some momentum because she ain't getting it right now. And that this performance, holy shit, her style, like I get what she's going for, how she's just kind of stalking and just walking into punches the entire fucking fight, but it never paid off for her. She didn't get close enough to get very good clinch situation. She actually was getting, you know, the worst end of the stick anytime the clinch came. It didn't look great for her. And I will admit, they gave her one sub attempt, but she did have probably about 4 that were pretty solid. The guillotine was not all the way where she needed it. I think she tried to jump that way too early in the first round. Like that, it looked like she needed this fight to be over, and you know we can see why. But the Kimura attempts that she had later in the fight, I thought were pretty solid because damn, I would not want my arm bent like that. I tell you. So Jasmine is a savage for this. I really doubted her, and maybe I just shouldn't anymore. You know, she beat somebody, you know, who coming down a weight class, and she did it very easily. She made it look easy. And to also note, these two women used to train together. So I don't know who used to get the better end of the stick, but MBS, she just did not have any answers.
Yeah, seriously one-sided affair as far as this fight went for Jasmine. Really nice grappling and ground strikes that put a rat-sized mouse on the side of Myra's brow in the first round. That was pretty gnarly there. Myra still had some decent counter striking, but it didn't really matter when Jasmine was on top working for so much of the fight. I mean, she really Jastovicius is like leveling up in a really like significant way at this point. And I would agree. I mean, I think that she was kind of one of those names that was just sort of in the pool for a while, but it's probably about time to start putting a little bit more respect on her name because she was having Bueno Silva frustrated. Myra was jawing at the ref, which is never a good look, you know, complaining about stuff when, I mean, and Felder said it exactly correctly. It's like when you start getting to the point where you're frustrated enough to be like yelling at the ref, looking towards the ref to get you out of situations, that's always a very bad look. Jasmine was just calm and in control the entire time through all of that. None of it was phasing her. Really poor showing for Myra Bueno Silva, especially at a weight down. Yeah, this was not a great look.
Yeah, I'm actually upset that I really trusted her because, like I said, there's no reason that I should have. But when I first started watching these events live, she was in the title fight, so presumably she had to have been decent. But as I see, I mean, women's MMA just changes quickly. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely unfortunate because I was in the same boat. I had picked Bueno Silva to win this fight, even though she was the dog, because I was like, you know, based on all of the surrounding factors, it made sense to me. It's like, you know, she challenged for the title, came up short, but still competitive within the framework of that fight, which is not a great fight, but she was, you know, within those confines, she still did her thing to an extent. And then the fight after that was stopped due to the cut. That was the Macy Chiasson fight, and it was a very nasty cut for sure. But you know, cuts happen, and that's just kind of how that went. So it wasn't like she was getting decently taken care of in that fight, but it was still competitive as well. It was competitive enough to make me think like the cut, if it hadn't have happened, like that could have still possibly went her way. So I think that there was enough evidence there to say, oh, she could come into this fight and still be that woman. And unfortunately, she was not. So, I mean, I don't know if she's completely cooked, but I based on a performance like that, I would kind of tend to agree with you. I think that she's just sort of going to stay as a middler, and that's just how it goes sometimes for some of these women.
Yeah, it was really telling later in the fight when she was trying to go for, I couldn't remember exactly how the commentary said it, but she was doing more like open grappling type of BJJ, and she was just leaving her face wide open, just getting pounded. Like she was going for leg locks, and it was not working, and it just
Yeah.
looked bad. I mean, she, you know, the coaching called for her to do more boxing after the first round, and she just wasn't able to get any closure on the distance. She just let Jasmine play the outside the entire time. Also, the fact that MBS shot 0 takedowns, and that was her game plan, is to just not strike very often and shoot subs when she gets me down. Like it was, I don't know, it just wasn't the right move. It was a hard one to see go down.
Yeah. And to that point, like I think that Jastovicius, the only thing that's really lacking at this point is just a slight leveling up of her striking, because really the ground game is obviously there. She's been doing really nice work in that department. But the issue becomes with that, women's MMA is often very grapple and wrestle heavy. So you're going to be being good in that department is great, but what will really set you apart is if you have the full-on well-rounded skill set to be nice wherever you are. So if she can get her hands just a little bit stronger, you know, if she can just have a little bit more power in her hands, get her striking just a little bit better, then I think that she'd be really well off. And hopefully that's something that we could see down the line for her, because she's been racking up some really nice wins lately and doesn't seem like there's any signs of stopping. She says that she wants the belt. So that could very well, you know, she's moving her way up towards it. But the farther that you get up the ladder, the more you're going to be having to deal with a lot of different things coming at you, and having a better, well-rounded skill set is exactly how you counter all of that.
And I think Anakin just made a really good comparison. She's pretty much like Gillian, and they both are Canadians. That was something interesting to note.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I have nothing left to doubt. Jasmine is probably going to get close enough to the belt where it matters, you know, where she's not just a good fighter, where she's kind of in that great territory. Because, you know, I may not love to see some of the stuff she does, but in this fight, she really did look impressive. I will say that. And it did also play a factor that MBS was doing nothing, most of it, but she did come out here and do what she had to do. She took the dominant position in this fight, and she didn't give up. She didn't look like she was weak in any aspect.
Yeah. So takes the win and moves on up. I would think that some higher level, higher numbers are going to be in her future very soon. So we'll see how she fares there. I hope that she can get the striking to where it needs to be in order to make that jump in rankings matter.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to the aforementioned Terrence McKinney versus Damir Hadzovic in this one. Run and gun McKinney gets it done again, which is, I guess, in context, based on that clip that we played earlier, pretty impressive and good to see, because he was saying that, you know, the cardio was super solid for him, but was potentially having some problems with the whole locker room situation, and still was able to pull off a victory like he always does. Like he usually does. You know, McKinney is one of those dudes that's kill or be killed, and puts it all out there on the line from the second that the fight starts. So he has that very much like, you know, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of deal. And sometimes it works out for him, and sometimes he gets taken out because of it. But based on the competition here, what we had done in our little research on the last stream, I was pretty confident in him being able to do his thing in this fight, and I was glad that that was correct.
Yeah, I mean, he might as well be Hamzat in the first round of fights. Like, he just can finish it. Like, I can't tell you how sometimes, and sometimes he's the one that gets finished. But when he's on, he's on. And we kind of scouted out that this was a hand-me kind of fight for him. This was definitely to get him back in the win column. But Damir, holy shit, the Bosnian bomber. Like, he got bombed himself, man. That's crazy.
And got Bosnian bombed.
So, yeah, it was pretty bad. But, you know, Terrence McKinney, Good performance, Demir. Nothing really to note, honestly. You just got starched pretty quick. So
Yeah, I mean, it was all pressure from McKinney, from the second the fight started, as usual. Nice kicks and ground and pound, pretty much exactly what you're expecting from him. The one thing that I did want to at least touch on was that it looked like a couple of those ground shots might have been questionable as far as the legality goes. I think he was doing a good job of trying to keep them legal, though. So it's like, it's one of those tough situations. Dude's moving his head. He's trying to get out of the way of shots. So obviously, he can't control every single land that his hands are going to have when the guy is trying to evade every one of them at close range on the ground. But a couple of them did seem slightly questionable. But either way, the referee was right on top of it. So it's not like he was getting away with anything. Just something to note, I guess.
yeah, what else I would like to note, because I think it's kind of fun to think about. The round of cuttings happened, and Damir Hadzovic was not on the list. So we're going to see the Bosnian bomber again. I'm ready.
That is kind of wild. I mean, look, based on his record, and you never want to just go off of the one fight, right? I mean, you get overwhelmed, you get caught. It does happen in fights. So you don't want to have it just be completely off of the one performance. But in his case, it was that performance plus things like a loss to Mark DeCasey. You know what I mean? Like that, I would think that he should certainly be on the chopping block, but lives to fight another day, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to the last fight, I could say that about MBS too. She's lucky because she needs to be watching her spot, and we'll talk about some more people who might be looking to watch their spot too. But this one it was completely one-sided as we expected. So good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to see a good finish for McKinney in the first round, and as Anakin brought up here, called out Chris Duncan. I think that's a fine fight to make. Chris Duncan is coming off of a nice win himself, so yeah, if that's the fight that they want to make, that could be a fun one.
Yeah, and I just want to give Anakin a little more shout out because they didn't cut Ty yet either, buddy. We're gonna see him soon.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of those interesting ones because at least with Ty, you know that there's like a fan favorite aspect to it, but if you don't have that, then your days could be numbered when the losses start adding up.
Yeah, I'm actually really intrigued to see how 2025 goes. I love the roster tracker. It's very interesting to just see it just at random times. It's like, oh, Dana just said fuck it. Like people just get removed at 2:00 in the morning. Like, I don't know. It's fun.
Yeah. Sometimes it be like that.
And speaking of a dude who needs to be removed at 2:00 in the morning,
this is Thomas Peterson versus Shamil Gaziev. I mean, well, look, I would say that the real story here is just the unexpectedness of Gaziev getting a knockout period, right? I mean, that I don't think was on anybody's bingo card, but what they were saying is that I guess Gaziev had broken his hand in his last fight, so that was playing a part as to why his output was as it has been in some of his previous fights, or at least in that one fight. I don't know about anything before that, but his last fight was the Dontel Mays fight, right? Is that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so I mean, then that would make sense for that because that was one of the most boring fights of all time there. But here, getting the job done early, and that was kind of all she wrote. I mean, Peterson is another Contender Series guy, right? I mean,
yes.
So that's this is not a great look. Just starting out. I guess that's really all that there is to mention here. I mean, he tried for a takedown, couldn't secure it.
Great on Shamil for that, actually. I give him that. His takedown defense looked pretty decent.
For sure. And really, I mean, the only other real note was that there was a little bit of striking on both sides before the right hand was landed by Gaziev. So, I guess maybe you can take that to the bank for Peterson as to why why he lives to fight another day. But walk-off KO was a little bit crazy in the sense that the shot didn't even seem like that crazy a shot. It was just sort of right on the button and drops him so hard that he self-ejected his mouthpiece.
Nice. Oh, I didn't even notice that. Well, what I was going to say, Shamil might have dropped him and walked off because he was probably already tired. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's very impressive to me that one, Shamil is actually ginormous. Like he really is like a very giant heavyweight. But his striking, while he did get a knockout with like a straight right or something, it's so bland and basic. Like he just walks up and just blasts like the same combination every time, and you know his belly's just moving, and it's just a hard thing to watch up until he gets the knockout. And he is a fan favorite, and I really do like Shamil. But Thomas Peterson, I could have told you from a mile away that this dude is getting starched by anybody right now. Like, and I'll give him credit. Like you said, with mentioning with the cuts of the other heavyweights, it's like, well, if you cut 2, why not cut 3? But Thomas Peterson at least was trying to strike. You know, other people on this card, we'll get to later, they had no will to actually strike with the opponent, and it was frustrating to see. But this one, at least, you know, it was interesting. And Shamil Gaziev, with his bland boxing, he got a knockout, and I'm very happy for him.
Yeah. I saw the Thomas Peterson boss baby comparison. That was not lost on me when when I saw the memes going around. But yeah, look, I mean, Gaziev is kind of one of those dudes that has the meme crowd also on his side. You know, that they're kind of pulling for him in a somewhat ironic fashion, but you get knockouts, bro. I mean, you know, you can meme it up until it's reality, right? I mean, I think that a performance like that certainly lends itself to there being some legitimate reason to keep an eye on the guy. And he is also coming out of the Dagestani system, I think, to an extent. Like, I mean, he's from Bahrain, but I believe that that was a real shot, right? Unless it was photoshopped, and I'm just
I think it was real. I think it was
yeah.
real. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a shot of him with Abdulmanap and Habib. So I mean, whether or not he's actually full on out of the Dagestani system or not, you know, at least there's crossover there. Whatever. Point is that the dude is seems to be trying. So I mean, look, heavyweight is a division that needs its heroes right now. We've got a gridlock at the top and not much else other than that. So if Shamil Gaziev wants to be that guy, just keep doing that, and that's really that'll take you far.
The only person that he's lost to is not even in the league anymore. So anything's possible right now. I think it's, you know, bright lights for Shamil. And, you know, Derek Lewis probably should be next. Maybe on, well, I was going to say Denise, but no, I think Shamil is obviously a little past that at this point. But Tybura would be cool. He would get mopped maybe, unless maybe he stuffs all the takedowns. I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah. You know, whatever it's heavyweight. It's one again. It's like we keep kind of going back to the same points, but you know, your pool is limited, so a couple of guys stick out that might make sense there. Either way, just be consistent. That's really all that I would like to see at this point. We saw Jalton Almeida get a TKO recently. That gave me a little bit of hope. If Gaziev wants to come out here and continue being consistent, then no problems there either. Just go out, get the job done, and do it to whoever they put in front of you. And you make a name for yourself that goes beyond the memes. That's 100%. Really what I'd like to see for him.
Yeah, I agree. This was a good showing for him, even though the opponent, like I said, I knew this wasn't a tough matchup for my guy. So just keep doing what you're doing. I'm intrigued to see what comes next for him. Hopefully it's probably a bigger name.
Yeah, same. All right. Well, moving on then. Mohamed Naimov versus Khan Ofli. However, the pronunciation still eludes me, but Mohamed Naimov versus Khan Ofli. Yeah, what'd you think?
I think I was very disappointed in my recognition of talent. You know, I liked Khan from Tough, and you know, he did his thing in the finale and unfortunately got knocked out. This performance I thought was going to be a big comeback for him, but he did a lot of really stupid stuff. And it was very annoying. Like, there were times where he was literally just giving up the position on the ground just to get into like full guard. And then he was losing the position still. I can't even remember too many things that he did well, honestly. It was a very disappointing performance, 0 for 6 on takedowns. Like, he was just not even able to get anything going. And it was unfortunate. I thought this was one of the better dogs on the card, but
yeah. I mean, I know that we kind of were looking at it from Khan's perspective because we both saw him on Tough and would have liked to have seen him do a little bit better in this one. But from Naimov's perspective, I mean, I think that he showed his well-roundedness really early in this fight and then kept it going pretty much throughout the entirety of the fight. He sort of carried this fight in that regard. Striking was crisp, good kicks. He led the dance. I mean, that's really the way that I was looking at it. Dominant performance, even with Khan getting a few decent shots in here and there. Really, what Khan's like the assessment that I had of him was that it was a whole lot of effort for not a lot of gain.
yeah.
That's what it looked like to me. Because I mean, this was kind of at a point where I was. I mean, like it sucks to say because like this was not a bad fight. This was definitely both these guys like going for it, but like there's just something about this fight that was not like overly engaging to me, and I think that that's really what it was. Is that it was a lot of like a lot of like hard fought exchanges that didn't lead up to any grand conclusion.
Yeah, and then towards the end of the fight, Khan definitely knows that he's down, and then he doesn't even make like a really strong attempt to try to get a knockout. I can't remember what he did exactly. He might have just clinched or he might have shot a takedown or something, but he definitely didn't stand and try to bang, which is unfortunate because I thought my Aussie King was going to show out for me. And Naimov obviously wasn't going to get baited into that, but you could at least have an effort there. I do think it's interesting to note that Naimov almost missed 100 shots and landed only 79. So, the accuracy, Khan's defense, he was doing well, it seems, but just clearly didn't have enough. The takedowns were the control time and the takedowns were really what was the standout part of it.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10, you cannot defend your way to a victory. It's
True.
gotta the offense has to be there as well. So, unfortunate look for Khan. Yeah, I mean, you want to believe a lot of times when these guys are coming out of countries that have really established programs that they're going to be having one leg up when it comes to things like preparedness and maybe the training system is a little bit more effective for them and stuff like that. Of course, Naimov coming out of Tajikistan, so that's a slightly less represented country in the UFC. But in this case, I mean, it looks like Tajikistan just sent their absolute best, and all of those people in that stadium out there in Tajikistan cheering for Mr. Naimov, they're pretty happy right now. So good representative of his country. And I mean, the other side of that coin of what I was saying about the more established nations when it comes to their systems and the representation when it comes to their fighters is that like they are more established. So you have more fighters and not every one of them can be a world ender. So unfortunately, Khan's looking like he is in that camp. And as Anakin pointed out, he is 0-2 now. So not a great look.
Does the tough finale technically count as...
I believe it does because
Okay.
that's in the organization proper, and
True.
all of those fights are like I think all of those fights count on their pro record anyway, like on Tough. So, that's like even if he had lost on Tough, it would count and it would have gone towards his pro record as well.
Right. Well, yeah, no, that's interesting. I just feel bad that I thought Khan was going to be able to do better. It was not the performance I needed from him. It was a really big letdown, not going to lie.
Yeah, for sure. So good win for Naimov though. 12-3. So the record's pretty solid. I think that he looked pretty solid overall. I would like to see some finishing ability out of him a little bit more. I mean, at least based on that fight. I'd like to see him be able to like utilize everything to the point of actually getting these fights finished. But that's really the only thing when it comes to this fight specifically. So we'll see what happens for him. I mean, he looked like proficient enough to continue to move up after that.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to the main card here. This is, I think, your fight of the night, to be sure. But controversy surrounds it slightly here. This is Fares Ziam versus Mike Davis. The note coming into the fight is that Davis was coming off of a bicep tear. That's we had talked a little bit about him being inactive. I guess he had to be sidelined a little bit because of that. So coming off of injury, but the bigger note here, and something that I think that you got to keep in mind now for Mike Davis just in general, which I did not know and kind of wish that I had known, is that he suffers from Lyme disease. That is a really like big note in my mind, because Lyme disease is something that really zaps your cardio, your energy levels. So I mean, it's not necessarily that it's always going to be a major factor, but it would be something that I would keep in the back of my mind whenever you're placing bets, just by nature of the disease itself, because it is a chronic disease. I mean, it does kind of come and go, so it's not like it's always going to be flared up to the point that it would make like a huge difference. But like I said, I just, when it comes to the like your bets and stuff like that, it would be something that would be sticking out in the back of my mind, because it can be very, very taxing on the system.
Yeah, that is honestly interesting to note, but I don't think that's what I'm going to go ahead and attribute the performance that Mike Davis had. This one, maybe you can talk about the fumes, again, if that's really where your mind is going. But Mike Davis, it was just not not the performance that we needed to see. First round, he's pulling guard. Like, that was the first thing he did. The first thing he did, and shout out Henry in the Discord. He always says, like, you normally can get a good vibe of the fight with the first like 10 seconds kind of deal. And in this one, it kind of changed a little bit during the later rounds, but for the most part, Mike Davis was just on the bottom getting grappled, and seemed to be that he chose to be there. And I will also note that this fight 100% should have been a stoppage by Mike Davis. He should have snapped Ziem's leg. I don't know how it didn't. Honestly, it was like really gross to see, because I was like thinking like, oh, it's gonna like snap, like it's gonna like pop like bad, but it never did. And I think Mike Davis really should have won by calf slicer. How the ref even just like let that go is pretty crazy to me. Like, that's a leg, man. But
he wasn't crying out. He wasn't crying out in pain, and he was staying with it. The flexibility of Ziem with those long legs. Congratulations for that. Talk about getting your stretching in, and that paying off some dividends there. Paying off. That Ziem certainly made that apparent. But I mean, to your initial point there, Davis did look extremely off in this fight. Sanko was talking about it on the commentary, saying how we've never really seen him fight that way before. And yeah, it really did show to anybody who's seen any of his other fights. But to the other side of the coin, I would say that, I mean, he did still make it pretty competitive. He came out the weird part about all of this, in context with all of what we had talked about, the Lyme disease, the fumes, and all of these things that are factors here, comes out and backflips to before the fight even started. So I'm like, this does not compute. He comes out, backflips, looks fine, and then immediately starts doing the guard pulling like you were talking about. And it was just a very strange deal thereafter. Like, it was not a performance that, at least in that first round, that looked like he had a game plan with it. And that I think was the scarier part. You never want to see a guy legitimately pulling his opponent down on top of him and then not having the next steps. And also when you have an opponent who's so much longer with his limbs. I mean, like, it just did not seem like a very sound game plan. So I don't know what all of the factoring when it comes to all of that stuff exactly was, but it just seemed a little bit strange. But all of that being said, I mean, he did end up later on being able to, kind of keep it competitive. And like you had said with the calf slicer, that was pretty goddamn wild. And a lesser opponent, a less flexible opponent, would have had that knee, just it popped completely. I mean, that kneecap would have been separated.
Yeah, I think also to know, whether you believe Mike Davis entered the fight at a disadvantage because you saw his backflip, he definitely might have left with something going on with his head, because he lost so much blood. That knee from Ziem But Mike Davis, man, I don't know how the cut got so, like, I know heads bleed a little more, but like the cut must have been like really bad because it's like dripping all over the mat. They're both covered red at the end of that round. And it was just pretty nuts.
Well, it was a whole lot of blood out of Davis in the second round after the knee, and then a whole lot of blood out of Ziem at the end of the fight too. So I mean, it really was a bloody affair here. And I mean, yeah, that mat was painted after that one. Boy, it was a lot going on there. But Ziem is really, I got to start, kind of giving this guy his flowers at this point, because his boxing is really nice. Like, his power shots are really effective, and he uses his range well. So it's like he can stay a little bit farther out, of course, because of the long limbs, and point from the outside a little bit. But when he's inside at range, like, he has a really nice tight hook that looks pretty effective. And I would think that some of these dudes who have a little bit more of a questionable chin need to watch out for that.
Yeah, he's definitely impressing. I mean, I wasn't too high on Mike Davis, like I said before. I mean, and I'll give context. I did put money on Mike Davis, but I've been saying that he just doesn't pass the eye test for me. I don't care what the record is saying. I'm not seeing somebody who's going to win me money. And I trusted other people's opinions once again, because I'm a community guy. But Mike Davis, like, actually, I won't give him too much shit because, like I said, this fight should have been ended. But I'll give ZM 100% credit that he's got that dog in him,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should have been ended. He didn't cry out, and he didn't tap. So it's like,
I'm saying, like, that's one of the crazier things that I've seen. Like, I can't imagine somebody not tapping.
Right?
To that.
Yeah.
So in any other scenario, like, literally 99 out of 100, that's a win for Mike Davis
for sure. And yeah, and I mean, look, I will take this one on the chin here, because I was one of the people kind of championing Mike Davis going into this fight. He was my biggest lock of the card, honestly. I ended up getting the main, co-main, and featured bout all correct, but this one I was entirely off on. So I will completely take that upon myself, and I can see why he doesn't pass the eye test. It does make sense to me. I mean, like, he's one of those guys that, like, he has very proficient wrestling, but like, he needs to get to it in order for everything to start clicking. And if he has opposition that's not allowing him to get his way, then it doesn't necessarily, like, the adjustments aren't there immediately to the point that he can make it go his way. So yeah, I think that shows.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I've talked about it before. It's like, some people have that switch where they can just go into a different zone. Like Mike Davis, he came in with a straight face and he left with a straight face. He didn't change anything about his aggression, and he didn't lock in. And that's really what it was. And like Anakin pointed out, he said he had an injury, just to add to the mound of excuses that this dude apparently has. But that's none of my business. I'll just point that out because that is a glaring issue. Now, that's 3, actually. But whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say, he was coming off of the bicep tear, which is probably a different injury than the one that he was talking about there. So, I mean, maybe he's just a little injury prone. That's also something that could be a thing to keep an eye on when it comes to him. But either which way, this was really an entertaining fight, and a bloody war between these two guys. And I think that it was another good test to prove that Ziem does deserve that, the level of respect that he's now demanding. Because I mean, we're already talking about him getting ranked opposition here in his next fight. Dana, I think, confirmed that he'll be getting somebody in the top 15, and with a performance like that, certainly warranted. I think that he had said in his post fight that was the first time he'd ever been cut in the octagon. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, then now you're getting a taste of it. You weathered that pretty well overall, even though it was at the very end of the fight, but whatever. I mean, he still had to be go through a good amount to even get to that point. And he came out on top. So give the guy the respect he deserves, and give him competition that he deserves.
Yeah, but I definitely will be throwing in the fact that he went to war with Mike Davis. When I'm watching his next fight, I will make sure to point, like, yo, this dude went to decision with a dude that he probably shouldn't have. But we'll see what the next matchup is for him.
And I think we also got to see what the next matchup looks like for Mike Davis as well. Because it's like all of the things, and I don't want to necessarily put all of this performance on all of those factors that we said. I mean, they're context if they are context only. You know what I mean? Like they could be 100% of the reasoning. They could be 0% of the reasoning. We never are going to fully know that. So we got to see what happens when Davis is not in a fume-filled locker room. His Lyme disease isn't flaring up. His bicep wasn't recently torn. He doesn't have all of those things. Like it doesn't matter when he's in the octagon here and now. You know what I mean? So it's like we got to see what he looks like in his next fight, hopefully without any of that other stuff as a factor. And then maybe we'll get a better understanding of like all of the dynamics of it. But in this fight here, you got what you got.
Yeah, 100%.
So good job, Mr. Zayam. And I look forward to him versus a top 15 guy. Moving on. This was Said Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. This is I don't know. I was kind of slightly disappointed with this fight. What'd you think?
I think one that I do believe that Vinicius was a talent that I'm not saying that I should have slighted, because I didn't. Like, I knew this dude was, the Loke dog goes crazy, but I did believe Said was gonna come back and have a really straight performance where he gets to the judging and takes it. But ring rust was absolutely a factor here. He completely gassed out. And it is crazy to think that Vinicius was able to, weather the storm and get all the way to the bell with an injury that, to his rib or something like that, because it looked like it hurt to me. He was wincing a lot towards the end of the fight. And Said really just didn't have, he was doing well enough at picking the shots well, like at the end, like he was doing enough creative moves where it kind of kept the distance and kept the fight going. He didn't really get into a slugfest all that much. Towards the end, once he was tired. At the beginning, these dudes were kind of going for it, and I really respected, Vinicius has this mentality that he's the best, and he'll take on anybody. He'll go into their home territory with an injury and win. It's very impressive, and I do think Vinicius deserves probably. Is Said ranked? He probably is.
I don't think so.
So Vinicius needs to be close, or he needs to get a rank.
I mean, yeah, he's still early on for that, I would think. But I mean, a performance like that certainly lends itself to that mentality. He wore Said down, which is fine. He got some nice striking off, high pressure from Oliveira. Said looked a little gassed early, in my opinion. So I think he got the better of him to the point where he was able to have a better performance later on because of that. Like he was in it early enough and stuck with it through injury, like you were talking about as well with the rib. The one thing that did stick out though is that Oliveira is a dirty fighter, bro. Multiple eye pokes and that little fishy finger to the mouth. I don't know if you caught that.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know if it actually went full on in, but it was close enough that we noticed on the watch along. I was like, there's just something unlikable about this guy to me. Like, I don't know if it's just his face or what it is, but like, there's something about him. Like, and he didn't do any of the showboaty shit that he was doing in some of his other fights. So I do give him credit for that. But like, I don't know. There's just something about him that I'm not like a big fan of. And the way that he navigated this fight did not like make a fan out of me. So I don't like, granted that, it takes two to tango over here. So it's not like Nurmagomedov was really making himself and doing himself any favors by the way that he conducted himself in this fight either. Cause like I said, I think he gassed out a little bit early and wasn't able to navigate as effectively, of course, as Vinicius was. But overall, it was just, I mean, yeah, Oliveira moves nicely. I just wish he wasn't an unlikable character.
I'm not seeing it. I really do like Vinicius. Like I said, I mean, he has this demeanor that not only is he the best, but he'll prove it to you. And I dig it. He's been calling out fights for a really long time. A lot of people that are, decent talent that you would probably say like, oh, he's not ready for. But like Said Nurmagomedov, and, this whole time people were telling me like, oh, he's not even related to Khabib. And it's like, well, guys, he did train with Abdul Manap, like, or whatever you want to say. Like he came in here with the necessary skills to win. And Oliveira really just got the better of him. I mean, I think I think he's showing the level that he deserves. Every time there's competition, he rises to that level. I think it's really important to note.
All right. Hey, fair enough then. If that's the case for you, then it could just be something that's rubbing me the wrong way personally. But either way, I mean, look, nice win. I mean, I'm not trying to take the win away from him. He did everything that he needed to do aside from finishing the fight. So to be able to have a nice dominant performance like that with an injury that he kept that pretty close to the chest up until the very end there, I would say. I mean, there might have been a couple of times here and there that it snuck in, but overall, like, he really, like, because you could tell, like, after the horn sounded, like, he was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, he went immediately holding on to the side. So good on him to be able to navigate the entire fight that way and get a good win here. So, not trying to take anything away from him, but like I said, there's just something there that's not clicking for me. But go out there and continue to get wins and continue calling for guys that make those fights, fights to look out for and watch. And, perhaps you'll win me over.
100%.
All right, coming into the home stretch here a little bit. All
Can't
right.
wait to talk about
I know
these guys.
This is one of those cards where, like, I mean, these fights that we've talked about up until this point have all been, they were what they were in their own right, but like, this card was very stacked in the top for a couple of reasons, and this is the first fight that kind of gets into that territory here. This is Sergey Pavlovich versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I mean, the win for Pavlovich for sure, but people are saying the aura is gone. What do you think?
Or 100% gone for Pavlovich, but that's not even the real story. The real story is just how lackluster these dudes made this performance. And I think it is why Yair was cut, because maybe he was doing all this, I'm ready to fight Pavlovich, I'll knock him out, do this. But when you watch the fight, these guys did not want to hit each other. They didn't want to engage in any type of flurry striking. They didn't want to set anything up. It was honestly embarrassing. And then, to make Pavlovich become a wrestler is honestly one of the craziest things ever. Like, this dude here, this is the longest fight that he's ever had. And it was by far the most boring performance that he's ever had. Like, holy shit, this dude just laid on top of a Yair. And the problem is that the entirety of the times that he was down on the ground, like, there was only 2 takedowns, and he landed both of them and just laid on top of him for the rest of the second and third round. At the end of the third round, Yair actually gets up with a minute left. And it makes you wonder, why the fuck weren't you doing anything like that the entirety of the fight? And the fact that you didn't want to strike, and you're getting, quote unquote, ground and pounded. There was nothing in this fight to even, like, praise, to be honest with you. Like, it was really bad.
Yeah, and to be clear, when you're saying Yair, you're talking about Jairzinho Rozenstruik.
Whatever you want, however you say
I want
it.
to make sure, because I, well, when you say Yair, people might think you're talking about Yair Rodriguez, but Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Yeah, no, feel you. Yeah, I'm with you on all of this. I think that when it comes to Rozenstruik, the impetus was really on him to turn up the volume, especially once he realized that Pavlovich wasn't throwing the power strikes that he was, like, that gained him the aura to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, that was the big deal, is that, one punch Pavlovich is kind of a thing of the past, it would seem like now, based on that especially, and the fights previous to it. This, as a more standard fight, I guess, more conventional type of fight, I think was, like, not the worst performance from Sergey. But what I had said about Sergey Pavlovich when it comes to the wrestling is that he is the prime example to me of why you should never listen to the commentary or anybody else who's telling you that, like, these power strikers, but they also have really good wrestling, they just never have to use it. Like, that's a note that I had heard about him in the past. Oh, he's really good with his wrestling, he just doesn't have to use it very much. It's like, if he doesn't have to use it very much and does not choose to use it very much, then to me, that means it doesn't exist. So here you ended up seeing it. I mean, like, it was passable, it was serviceable. It certainly got him
get cut.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, right. He definitely didn't get cut, but I mean, but like, it did the job, is what I'm saying. I mean, like, he laid on top of him essentially. I mean, he was able to smother him, kept him down. It was, it was functional for what he needed to have done if that was the fight that it was going to be. But when you don't have anything coming back at you from Rosenstrike, which he did not, like, that's what I was saying earlier, is that, like, if Rosenstrike didn't see the power shots coming his way, a lot of times these guys were standing in front of each other, just sort of waiting for the other guy to go. This was one of those ones where the referee was calling, more action. Let's go, guys. Come on. Let's get this thing going. Like, if
and
that's
they were
the
standing.
case,
that's the crazy part.
Right, exactly. So it's like, if you're sitting there taking pictures, like, you got to actually be the one to be first to the draw, and he just was not. So, this was a deserved win for Pavlovich, but and not great when it came to Rosenstrike. And obviously, Rosenstrike is the other fighter that got cut that we had mentioned earlier. So
I questioned for a while, like, okay, did he have this crazy momentum? He had never been finished, and then Tom Aspinall just derailed it all. But his debut was against Alistair Overeem, and he got knocked out. Like, I'm confused on, like, where his mindset is, because he's clearly made a comeback before. He went on like a 12, not 12, but he went on a big finish streak and then got to the title fight, or the interim, whatever it was. And it's just crazy that he hasn't been able to just recover from it. Like, he really just doesn't strike like he used to. He posts videos of him on the treadmill doing the Yuri thing, shadow. It's like, dude, I'm not seeing it anymore. It's gone. The Russian missile crisis is true.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those unfortunate deals that sometimes, like, and we see this. I mean, this is not an uncommon thing to see, like, just a fight changes the trajectory of a fighter's career. Like, the circumstances were odd. Now, I mean, and we're talking about a guy who won his fight, by the way. You know what I mean? So it's like, he did win. It's not like, it's just the issue that you run into when you had the streak that Sergey Pavlovich had, was that this is the narrative that you're creating for yourself. And then when it changes, the dynamics of how you're viewed are also changed. So I don't know if it's necessarily that, like, he's just a completely different guy, but it certainly did look like he was a different guy, even in victory here. So, I mean, coming off of 2 losses, one, of course, to the current interim champion, you wanted to see him get back in the win column, and he did that. So that's a great thing in and of itself there, but it was against a guy who did not have a lot of output coming back his way, and it wasn't in dominant fashion. And for those reasons, it does seem like the aura has gone a little bit.
I think it's also to note, and this is probably part of the reason that it went to the bell. I mean, these guys used to train together. Sergey just cannot beat up his friends. I mean, that's just probably what it really comes down to, because this was anything but a beatdown. And Sergey is like, that's what he used to do, man. I just don't get it. Like, he had never been to like a 3rd round up until last year.
Yeah, so, it's a crazy stat that does not seem that he's going to be replicating again, at least based on that. So yeah. I don't know. Hopefully he can figure out whatever is plaguing him and become that guy again, because, I mean, he is in a position to still be that guy. Heavyweight is the exact weight class that it is still possible. I mean, these heavyweight, you can be a little bit older, you can be a little bit slower, the power is the last thing to go kind of deal. So there's nothing to say that he couldn't go out there and be one punch man again, but he just doesn't seem to be that guy right now. And it's a little unfortunate. I was definitely a little bit nervous. I mean, not based on the overall performance, because he was pretty dominant. But it was one of those deals that, because of the way that he was navigating the fight there, like, even up until the very end, I mean, because if you recall that 3rd round, they'd gone down to the ground, and it was a situation like, if he had been able to just stay on top of him, it could have been like 3 full-on minutes of just on the ground. It didn't end up being that, though. Jairzinho got back to his feet, and in that moment, I turned to Vitzking on the watch along and was like, there's still a chance that Jairzinho could land a power shot and knock him out. Like, I mean, and so, like, that in and of itself is, like, to be able to have said that about a fight with Sergey Pavlovich in it, kind of tells me all that I need to know at the moment about how he's, where he's at.
Yeah, and this was another one where I thought a live dog. Like, this one, Rosenstrike had the skill set to be able to dismantle Sergey, just like Volkov did. and he would actually have been able to do it a lot faster and probably been able to get that one shot off because he's pretty fucking fast for a heavyweight. But he just didn't showcase any of the skills that we've seen before. It was pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jairzinho Rozenstruik cut from the promotion. Sergey Pavlovich, maybe him versus Shamil Gaziev.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it, but like I said at the beginning, I think this is Dana. I mean, I think he is just calling our bluff. Like after this fight, I can even tell you that I was sitting here saying, "Yo, that was pretty fucking pitiful." And then you get on Twitter and it's like, "Yo, roster tracker removed." You know, people memeing it, and then it's like Rozenstruik. So maybe listen. If we don't want to see it, why would he pay him? You know, and maybe that's on us because we get one bad performance and we throw him under the bus, but if Dana's listening to us like that, I mean, I don't know. Can't really argue.
Yeah, and it is kind of crazy because I mean he was on. I mean he had a little bit of a rocky road at certain times, but he was coming off of a win before that fight. So, right? I mean, Jairzinho Rozenstruik had just beat Taito Ivasa, no?
Yeah, he beat Shamil, and then he beat Taito Ivasa.
So yeah, I mean, you know, 2-1 in his last 3 and still gets cut. That's kind of crazy.
And he was ranked, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, he was ranked pretty high. So
yeah, kind of wild, you know, but that's just how it goes. So
in Shamil's league, that's what happens. You beat him and you got to go.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's Shamil world order over here now. We know it's Shamil's world. We're just living in it, I suppose. But yeah, fine enough win for Pavlovich. Again, if you take away all of the trappings of what he used to be, this really was just a standard kind of fight, like a standard do what you need to do to win a fight kind of fight. So I really can't be too mad at that aspect of it. But again, if you take all of those other factors into account, it was a little bit lackluster. And I know that a lot of people were a little bit underwhelmed for that reason.
Well, I mean, like this performance right here, like this is you couldn't tell me that this wasn't Waldo Cortez Acosta. Like that, it's unfortunate that that's the level that a world beater like Sergey has come to. But I mean, it is what it is. You know, people change. You know, some things you can't. Some things you got to just get over. And I guess Sergey, when he gets a friend across the training room, if they got to fight eventually, hopefully he gets over it. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, people changing will certainly take a big front and center place when we get to the main event. But
true.
All right. So yeah. So that's Pavlovich and Rozenstruik. You know, I mean, any other notes on that before we move on?
No, hell no.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let's move on. Indeed. All right. So next up was co-main event, and this was Shara Magomedov versus Michael Venom Page. Very nice to see the MVP of old back in there doing his thing effectively. Really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I actually think in the predictions video I brought it up. It's like this wouldn't be a bad loss for Shara because it's not somebody in his weight class. It's not somebody that he's gonna have to see again, you know, to get to the belt or whatever.
It is his weight. Did they both move up for it?
MVP moved up.
Yeah. So, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. It's right. Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, someone else coming into his weight class.
Right. So it's not like this loss is somebody that is, you know, like if he would have lost to, you know, anybody in his actual weight class, it would be a bigger difference because like, oh, well, now we know how to beat him. And MVP is somebody that you can't really replicate, you know, in the division that he's in. You know, Shar is that replicant version, and it unfortunately didn't go his way, but there wasn't really much to say about this fight because they both they played their game, and it's unfortunate that they play the outside and do a lot of nonsense. I don't know. MVP just kind of had fun and, you know, won the crowd over. And it wasn't like it was a close matchup because Charlotte definitely didn't win any of the rounds. Like he looked more frustrated than anything. And MVP just, like I said, ended up styling on him kind of deal. But it wasn't the matchup that everybody thought it was going to be, unfortunately. When you get these Mortal Kombat style matchups, sometimes it's just not what it is.
Well, I mean, I would say that this was a slight vindication of all of the criticisms that I've had of Shara coming into this fight because but only slightly, I would say, because I mean, he wasn't able to figure out the puzzle that is MVP. That's always how I look at MVP's style, is that it's a puzzle that if you can solve the puzzle, then there is a path to victory there. Some people can figure it out, some people can't. Chara was one of those people that could not. But the vindicating part of it was the fact that in his lack of being able to figure the puzzle out, he also did not try a ton. Like it was there was a lot of times where, because of the unorthodox movement of MVP, Charles just looked a little bit like a deer in the headlights. I mean, like he wasn't able to get his striking off. He was getting countered a whole lot whenever he was trying, so it made him a little gun shy, I would think. And so I think all of those factors came together to make this a really one-sided fight. And MVP, that it's a hard puzzle to solve for a lot of guys. I mean, he's pogo stick jumping all over the place. He's really fast with his fast ins. That's another aspect of him. And he can snap a kick really, really quickly. And some of the stuff that he was pulling off really was paying dividends with the style that he has. So I don't think that it was necessarily the worst loss because of how unpredictable MVP is, like you were saying, but it did kind of highlight that when there is an opposition that Chara can't figure out, that he's certainly beatable. And that's what I've always kind of saw with him. I mean, like when you talk about the eye test, yeah, I mean, he's got certainly a look, and his style is somewhat flashy when he's able to do exactly what he wants to do. But there was always just this kind of niggling point in the back of my mind that, I just didn't see what everyone else was seeing in him. And I think that it was very apparent in this fight that there are holes in the game.
It's hard for me to say I agree, because like I said, this is somebody that you're not gonna see a replicant version of it. Like Chara's just not gonna fight MVP again. And now that Chara has that loss, it seems he seems one beatable, but that's not really the case, because Chara has such an interesting style where he can probably still be successful enough until he faces like a very heavy grappler kind of deal. But I think this is good for him, because being undefeated, it is like a target. Like everybody's just waiting for the moment. Like every matchup is just the one that you're probably going to lose, because nobody stays undefeated forever. And it's not like you went out here and got knocked out by MVP, or you got made a fool. Like it wasn't like a horrible performance. It was just you couldn't figure it out. And most people aren't going to be able to figure Chara out. So I think it was just a good performance that I don't necessarily think is going to have lasting effects on either of these fighters' career.
Perhaps. I think that the bigger takeaway then, based on that assessment, is that Chara did not adjust based on what was coming back, and that would be concerning to me going forward. When you have, I mean, you're always going to have different styles that you're going to be, dealing with and whatnot. And MVP is a very specific, different style. It just happens to be close to him, but it's, different compared to other fighters that he would be facing. So you got to know that if the game plan's not working, like by the second round, even, I would have thought that he at least would have tried to level change at some point. One thing that was a big note that I really agreed with Sanko on the commentary was that MVP, because he's so good with the fast ins, he gets himself backed up to the cage a decent amount, and he does have some lateral movement as well. But there were a lot of times where he was beyond, that black line, that space that's really, close to the outside of the cage, or, between the center and the outside of the cage there. And like that would have been the opportunity to adjust your game plan and try to go for something different. It didn't even matter if it actually like got it to the ground or was overly effective, but you got to give a guy like MVP different things to think about when he's getting everything that he wants out of the fight. So it's like you're standing in front of him, kind of, you're also bouncing around to an extent, but it's not enough to throw him off of his game. He's getting everything that he wants out of the fight. You got to know that that something needs to change. And, I respect his corner. in going into the third round, because they were like, look, you need to go out here and like lay it all on the line at this point, because basically nothing is working. Like, this needs to be your round, and it just was more of the same. I'd say that was his biggest fault in all of this.
I actually think the most glaring thing, and I believe it was this fight, so correct me if I'm wrong. When Shara got clinched up, MVP went for the clinch a little bit, and Shara just showed no instincts at all. Like, he just had his arms just kind of flailing, and then he got put on the cage, and then he didn't try to like get under hooks or look for trips or anything, and it was just very glaring. You're wondering if he's going to switch it up. I mean, he doesn't have grappling. He doesn't have any physical, whatever you want to say. Like, he's a striker. I mean, that's literally what he is. And I bring up something funny that was said at the beginning. I don't know if this was just the Discord being stupid, but they were saying that the reason that he's not in the Dagestani camps is because he didn't want to shave his head. And if that's true, that's pretty funny. But yeah, he doesn't have grappling at all.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like, you can kind of chalk it up to just that, but that's a pretty big problem when it comes to mixed martial arts, So,
well, and so look at somebody who's kind of similar, doesn't have as big of a namesake yet. Like, Shara's a big name, and he's somebody who never implements grappling, has never really seemed to learn it too much. But then you have somebody like Kopylov, who after he came in and showed us his striking, then he had a wrestling match that he was able to excel in against Cesar Almeida, and then he comes back and then he uses the striking again. Like, he showed that he can do it and win a fight that way. I mean, if I want to give Sergey credit for that, sure, but it wasn't impressively. But Shara he's never, if he doesn't have it now, he's not going to get it. I mean, can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Well, I mean, hopefully you can, but it doesn't look like that. And I'd say that Kopylov is a good example of somebody who does it correctly in that regard. So that's these holes in the game are things that like had not shown themselves earlier in some of his previous fights, but seeing it here again, I think it was just a slight vindication of what my gut had been telling me about him for a little while, and why I went with MVP in this fight and was correct in that regard, thankfully. But when it comes to Shara being a big name, I'm glad you brought that up. I had watched somebody talking about this fight a little bit and getting some other perspectives on it, and they were saying that, like, Shara to an extent had been slightly hot-shotted based on some of the competition that he had earlier on. And, the double back fist is certainly impressive. You can't take that away from him. That was awesome to see. But aside from that, I mean, like, some of these other performances were against talent that was not necessarily like, really at their peak of performance. So if he's finally getting to the point of being against guys who are going to bring like an A game, regardless of what the style is, you know what I mean? MVP, of course, you have to keep that in context because MVP is a very specific style. But like, once you're getting into the territory that MVP operates in, then you're going to have these guys that are coming out here to end fights. You're going to have these guys that aren't going to be, slouches when it comes to cardio and bringing the fight to him. Like, they're not going to abide by letting him just point the fight all the way through and get his way so that he can get a late finish kind of deal, like, so I just, it's all of those factors that sort of were where my mind was at earlier in his career. Seem like they were coming to roost here, but I will save that, if he comes out in his next fight and is right back to it against an opponent that makes sense to be impressed by, then, there is some hope for him still.
Yeah, I agree, but it'll be interesting to see what's next for both of these dudes. Like, I don't know if you saw, MVP actually said that he's willing to move up another weight class and even fight Yuri if that's something that
I did not see that. That would be kind of crazy, because the other note that I did have was MVP at middleweight. That doesn't seem like such a crazy idea. If he said he wants to go back down to welterweight to go finish some business down there, I guess that makes perfect sense. But I don't mind if MVP wants to stay a little bit heavier, man. I mean, he was certainly not any slower than he was, which was good to see. His speed was still there. So if that's the case, then you do you, brother. Get the wins.
Yeah, I mean, and he's kind of molding himself into a likable dude. It's not like I dislike this dude, but with the clip that you were showing on the stream about why he didn't have his flag, that was really interesting to see. But he's kind of turning into one of these game fighters. The fact that he said that he would go up to fight Yuri, not only is that like a really cool fight that I would love to see, but it's like he don't care. Like, he's just here to fight. I mean, if it's got to be Shara, if it's got to be Yuri, or if he's got to go back down and finish business, like, it don't really seem to bother him, which is interesting. Crazy enough, like, this dude is able to fluctuate weight like this. If he's planning to go up to 205, surely he ain't coming back down to 75 or whatever. So at least not in this year or something, or he would have to bulk up to get to whatever you want to say. Like, it's interesting to think, but MVP, I'm really liking him.
Yeah, same. I've been a fan of MVP since before he was in the organization, and I think it's really nice to see him succeeding in the UFC now after being so successful in Bellator for so many years. And I guess, not to derail things, but I do think that it's an interesting note. We've talked about it plenty of times on this show. A bunch of fighters defecting from the PFL stable now. We just got word today that Patchy Mix is looking to also leave the PFL. So, I mean, a bunch of these guys who are really good in their own right outside of the UFC potentially coming over. MVP is laying out a really nice roadmap for some of these guys. Like, look, you've proved it elsewhere against whatever level of competition you were having in these organizations. If you are really about it, then there is a place for you in the UFC. Come over here and prove it here too. MVP is doing just that, and I really like it.
Yeah, 100%. Not that this wasn't a performance where he didn't put on the striking that I would have loved to see, because it was a little lackluster at times. Like, that whole first round honestly was pretty brutal to watch, because they didn't do anything
except for at the very end when he got that freaking hook kick.
Yeah, true.
Pretty impressive. I was amazed that Char was able to eat that, but I do agree with you other than that.
Yeah, so great win for MVP. Shara, I think, not back to the drawing board, because you're clearly set in your way of how you're gonna fight, but listen, what are you gonna do against Hamzat, dude? Like, seriously, I don't know.
Exactly. And that's what exactly what I'm getting at when I talk about, like, having to be a fighter who can account for anything that's coming back at you. I mean, you've got a lot of different fighters with a lot of different styles. This is mixed martial arts. You can, if you want to be a kickboxer, go be a kickboxer. It's not, it's not going to fly, especially at the highest levels. So we'll see what he can do. But yeah, I think that it really depends on how much they want to continue this sort of Shara experiment, so to speak. You know what I mean? There are a number of factors about him that are slightly detrimental, I would say, as far as building up a star goes. Of course, the vision in the one eye is a good example of that. There's the fact that he can't get sanctioned in the United States is a pretty big issue there, I would say. So it depends on what they want to do with this guy and how much they're going to continue to try to push him after now taking a loss. I don't think that this necessarily kills his aura by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll see what the next matchup looks like and how he performs in it. And then I think we'll get a better assessment overall.
100%.
All right. Well, moving on to your main event of the evening, Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov. First note just says sigh. Is he was looking good in that first round. Good takedown defense. And then, aside from the nice uppercut from Imavov, he was holding his own, as he has been in the fights that he has lost recently. I mean, the Strickland, I think, was a little bit of an outlier when it came to that. But when it came to the Dricus fight, he was doing his thing for a while in there. I think a lot of people had him up on the scorecards until he was finally submitted. And So I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily have given him that first round, but he certainly wasn't getting dominated or anything. But second round, it was all over. What'd you think?
Yeah, that first round, like you said, Izzy was looking pretty decent. I was pretty confident in this pick because the lines were pretty close. -170 for Izzy. I thought that was the freest money that I've ever seen in my life. And then he gets caught with a lead uppercut where he doesn't even have any plans to block or to return fire. He just puts his hands straight out and eats an uppercut.
Yeah.
And then the second round, he does the exact same thing, except Imavov drops a bomb of an overhand. Staggers him, puts him up against the cage, and then flurries raining down on him. Like Izzy, God, it looked, like you said, it looked good. It looked promising. It didn't look, like he was about to starch Imavov, but it looked like he was doing fine enough that something could come out of it. But wow, did I underestimate the power that Imavov has? Not gonna lie, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, this was one of those ones that I was sad that I I was sad that all of the research and the thought process that I had was correct. You know what I mean? Like, it's an unfortunate thing to see the changing of the guard happening before your eyes, which is exactly what we've been seeing for quite a while. We're in a flux period in a lot of these divisions, and Izzy is just one of those guys that we're seeing it happen in real time. But all of the pieces that I think that we talked about on the last episode of the show really did come into play here exactly as they were laid out. Imavov does have some good power. He's a pretty technically proficient fighter overall. I really do have to start respecting him a little bit more as well. Sometimes he's been a little bit lackluster, a little bit boring in some of his fights. And then there were a couple of fluky deals there, of course, with the Cannonier finish and the no contest with Chris Curtis. We talked about this stuff. It's one of those deals, though, that when you have all of the elements together, which he seemed to in this fight, then you also pair it with Izzy being on the backslide a little bit later in his career, also not really having the killer instinct to get the belt back at this point. Imavov really gunning for the belt. These are all the things that we had talked about, and I think that they all kind of fell into place exactly as laid out, which, like I said, I'm not super happy about it because I am a fan of Adesanya. You really can't take away any of the accolades that he has as one of the most dominant champions that we've ever seen in this sport, but Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, at the beginning of the fight, losing to Imavov, it's like, well, Izzy really does fall off if that's the case. Because like when you look at Imavov compared to a lot of the other opponents that Izzy has beat, it's just not on the level, and especially from a former champ. But I will say that at the beginning of the fight, I said if Imavov does this, I will be respecting him. There's no other way around this. If you beat Adesanya, then you're certified good enough as of right now. But the fact that he starches him means that he might be a little better than we're giving him credit for.
Yeah, and really what we had said about the implications of this fight were exactly as they were as well. I mean, this was because I'm seeing Josh Koscheck, UFC, the actual Josh Koscheck.
Yeah.
But he's saying no, Izzy's not done. He's going to bounce back. Well, this was the fight that needed to happen, and that's what's I think the most unfortunate when it comes to Izzy specifically, because you have two fighters that are at very different stages of the game right now. And this was the fight that either Israel Adesanya was going to bounce back and stay in the top of the conversation and prove that he was still that guy, or Imavov was going to surge legitimately into the conversation. He was already kind of there, but now, I mean, he's undeniable at this point now. So, if it was going to happen for Adesanya, this really needed to be the fight. It did not. People are calling for a retirement for Adesanya. I don't know if that necessarily needs to happen, but it's going to be a significant drop in competition, and you are potentially getting into legacy tarnishing territory if you continue on. Now, I don't think that, again, nothing takes away from what he already did. So if you're thinking about it in like the big picture, that like, because if you can compare it to someone like Anderson Silva, right? Like, I mean, a guy who is the GOAT to a lot of people and all this stuff, amazing win streak, all of that kind of stuff. The later part of his career to some people was somewhat tarnishing to his overall perception as far as like the outside observer may look at it. So if you want to look at it in that regard, then fine. It depends on how Adesanya looks at that, and it's his legacy to have and to do with what he wants, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's another thing where we just gotta wait to see what's next, and that's really what happens. Every week we get to see the moments that are built up, but then it's really just about finding out what's next for the guys. If Imavov is really destined to get the belt, I mean, Izzy was a pretty good step up in competition, but the next one is gonna be pretty crazy if it's towards the top 5 kind of deal. I mean, I know he already lost to Strickland, but maybe he's wanting that rematch, and if Strickland loses again, I don't see that out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I'm choosing the words carefully here, just because it's like I don't want to be disrespectful to Adesanya based on the accomplishments he's already had, but you're just getting into a territory here where it's like, if that fight does happen again, does it go any different? If he has lower competition, is he able to overcome that? Based on these performances is really what you have to go on right now. And it's just the difference is noticeable. It's just, you can't deny what your eyes are telling you,
I think we are closer than ever to a Paulo Costa rematch with Izzy. So
that might not be out of the question. Yeah. That I think could be more plausible for sure.
I've heard Kelvin thrown out too as a rematch, but
yeah, fair enough. If that's what they want to do, if that's what he wants to do, I think that really where we're at right now is just to see what Adesanya wants to be the next thing. And he's still in control of that aspect of it. I think that perhaps stepping away for a little while longer than he's already stepped away might be the move for him. But it's up to him. It really is up to him what he wants to do. And on the other side of the coin, Imavov, I mean, right now, we had the conversation on the watch along, me and Vitz King, and I posed the question to you: does Imavov get the shot after this fight coming up, or does Hamzat still skip the line?
It's still Hamzat, and it's not even skipping the line at that point.
Right?
After
Yeah.
it would be skipping the line if he got over Strickland. But the fact that Strickland is getting the matchup is pretty crazy. He must have some good negotiating power. But Hamzat is definitely next. That's why I think after Strickland potentially loses, you could do the rematch with Imavov, and because that was a short notice bout that he lost. Maybe if he was in preparation of a full camp, against Strickland, maybe he'd be able to cook something up, or maybe that's what he's able to sell as the idea. I don't know. This one will be interesting. Izzy, like you said, we got to figure out what he wants to do.
Yeah, but either way, Imavov firmly in the conversation now, and I would think a title shot for him is not too far off. So keep an eye on the guy. That could be potentially a future champ. I really didn't think that I would be saying that necessarily based on the trajectory that I had seen in previous fights. But again, you make yourself undeniable in this sport, and you really have nothing. There's nothing else you can say. There's no counter argument to knocking out Israel Adesanya.
100%.
So, we're going to talk about 312 here. We said Strickland with his negotiating power. I think that one of the interesting factors of 312 is that I don't think I've heard anybody really talking about this fight. Like, there really has not been much discussion about it. When, you talk about Strickland as to why him having negotiating power would be a thing, having the belt for a single stretch there, no defense type deal, I guess does still hold a little bit of weight. But, the whole Sean Strickland mania that we were in for a little while there, not too long ago, Strickland being in the headlines, and Strickland, the wild man, the American psycho, all the, the stuff that people were saying seems to be completely tossed out of the conversation at the moment, as far as what I've seen. Maybe you've been seeing some stuff on Twitter that I haven't seen.
No, I mean I agree. It's one of these main events that sneaks up on you because nobody's really batting an eye. And I think it's because we assume DDP is probably going to get it done. And whether I believed in the moment that that was the first outcome, I do think Sean Strickland in the moment I thought Strickland won. But looking back, DDP mixed up mixed martial arts too well. I mean, he was just actually playing a complete game and it was working. So you can't really argue too much against that.
Yeah. I mean, I understand a lot of people's perception of that first fight. Um, I don't think that it was the wrong call. I do think that Dricus did exactly what he needed to do to win that fight, and this is Strickland's shot to change the course. I mean, like, fine. We're talking just a second ago about if Hamzat deserves it more than Strickland, or what the proper fight to make would have been. Well, it doesn't matter now because Strickland's getting his shot. So make it count, Sean Strickland. I mean, all of this stuff, we talk about the narratives in this sport a ton on this show. And that's because I think that they're very important as to how things eventually end up happening. Well, Strickland is a guy who created a very specific type of narrative around himself with the way that he conducts himself and his personality and, the nature of the talking points that he likes to bring up and all this kind of stuff. Well, this all got you back to where you wanted to be because you were a little bit of a crybaby after you lost that belt. I mean, for a guy who didn't care about the belt in his own saying, he was one that didn't seem to have much of an interest in the belt, all this and that until he did. So it's like, if you're, navigating to getting back to the shot here, then this is your time to adjust and make this really count.
100%. Yeah, this one, I think it'll be interesting just because I like DDP and I just love how goofy he is in the octagon. But like I said, I think DDP is going to get it done once again. I mean, he already did it once. It's hard to deny. And if he doesn't, we're going to get a trilogy. So let's not.
You think so? Oh yeah, man. If yeah, sorry, my bad. I misinterpreted what you said there. No, absolutely. I think it would be a trilogy if yeah. Well, I guess it depends on on the nature of the loss, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that the issue with Dricus is that he was counted out so much by people because of the awkwardness of his style that when finally he was able to prove everybody wrong, it's like I don't know. That's the reason that I think that there's a little bit of a caveat is that if Strickland gets it done in like spectacular fashion, then the narrative might shift to, oh well, he was never really that good. Look at what happened, kind of thing. Like, and I don't think that that's like I don't buy that at all. I just could hear people saying shit like that, and we'd have to see thereafter. But
I only say there would be a trilogy is because DDP's not going anywhere. If he loses the belt, I mean, he's going to be the first to call out Hamzat type deal, and then he'll beat Hamzat and then go fight Strickland again. That's how I feel DDP operates. And listen, he has no reason not to. This dude's a fucking G in there. I love this dude.
yeah, I mean, that's, again, we talk about the narratives here. I think that Dricus has done such a great job of creating his own version of that. Like, Dricus is the coldest trash talker, sly sniper with his comments and stuff like that. I mean, he really is one of the most proficient talkers in the game right now. And that's only when it comes to the trash element of it. But outside of that, he carries himself like exactly as a champion should. I mean, he's a very respectable figure in this sport, all over, I would say. And whether or not you like the lack of technicality in the way that he conducts himself in the cage, it's an effective methodology that has been working for him up until this point, obviously, because he's got a belt over his shoulder in that picture. So, I also agree. I think that this fight smacks to me of the Pereira Prohashka rematch. And my note is exactly the same in this fight. If Strickland does not do some kind of adjustment, then it's going to be pretty much a mirror match. Now, granted, the fight was close to begin with in the first one. That's why this fight is taking place. So the adjustment, I'm not here to tell you exactly what the adjustment should be. But I'm just saying that if it's the exact same fight that he came in with in the first fight, then the outcome's going to be exactly the same. And we saw what happened in the Pereira-Prochazka match that I mentioned.
Yeah, if DDP comes out here and smokes Strickland, like that would be pretty crazy. But I don't know if that's going to happen. It'll probably go to decision again because that's just what Sean Strickland does.
Yeah, it would be nice now that Dricus is really turning up the takedowns even more, and obviously probably has a little chip on his shoulder with the confidence of submitting Israel Adesanya for the first time in his career. It'd be nice to see him get it done on the ground. That would be the way that I would like to see it, honestly. And I know that might not be the popular take to be like, oh, take it to the ground, kind of, people want to see them stand and bang, but as we all know at this point, Strickland is not exactly a stand and bang fighter. So, I mean, you're going to get a lot of Philly shell. You're going to get a lot of jabs. A lot of teeps kind of deal. I mean, the fake teep with the leg raise and all that kind of stuff. I would like to see Dricus secure the takedown because he took Sean down a good number of times in that first fight. I'd like to see him get him down and actually finish the fight. That would be I would like that.
Yeah, I can see it happening. I would just love, like, I used to like Sean Strickland as a, not that I dislike him now, but as somebody in the division, he was one of my favorites. But like DDP has surpassed that in every regard. Like you said, this dude carries himself like a champion. He's one of the better trash talkers. He's just mentally beat all of his opponents before he actually beats them in the cage, and it's pretty demoralizing, to be honest. And DDP's just that dude.
Yeah, well, it's the proficiency of the method of attack when it comes to the trash talk. It's like he really does laser in on the exact right thing to say, and then does it in a way that cuts really deep. If you can make Sean Strickland cry, then that's a sign of effective trash talk, I would say.
100%.
So, I think that we're both in lockstep on thinking that Dricus is going to get the job done here. But, we'll see if Sean can pull something out. I'm not opposed to that.
All right, my girl.
Yeah, moving on to Zhang Weili and Tatiana Suarez, the fight that I am most excited about on this card. Just before we get into this fight, we had talked on a previous episode about, like, this card not really being pay-per-view material. I'm hoping that the main and co-main exceed expectations so that it gives the people in Australia a good enough show to warrant the price of admission here, because we're going to get into the lower part of the card and it starts to drop off really quickly after this. But that being said, what are you thinking about this match?
I think it's going to be easy. My girl Weili is just going to do exactly what she did to Jan and just bully her for. It's probably going to be for 5 rounds. Weili at this point in her career, she's not really finishing people. And her chin did look a little questionable against Jan. She got dropped a couple times, but she was able to weather that storm and get the W. Tatiana Suarez, I yet have seen her fight. So she's definitely gonna have some ring rust. She's not gonna look like herself. And the fact that this is even money for Weili, oh my goodness, this might be a good fucking night.
Well, I would say Tatiana Suarez is a very big wild card in that respect. So if you're not familiar with her kind of timeline, she has overcome a good amount of adversity, like when it comes to health issues. She went through some pretty serious health issues that had her sidelined for a while, and then she's obviously injury prone because she has been in and out dealing with injuries for a large amount of her career, it feels like. But I say all of that to say that when you bring up ring rust with her, I'm not so sold on that being a concept, because every time that she has had a long layoff, she's come back and looked just as good. Now, granted, you could say that the level of competition might not, be, I mean, they're definitely not going to be Zhang Weili, right? I mean, she's one of the most dominant women that we have. So I think that there is certainly some potential for that to be, for Suarez to possibly look like there might be some ring rust, but there are no signs that I have seen visually up until this point to say that a layoff is going to affect her in that regard.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one because I don't know what to expect. Like I said, haven't seen Tatiana Suarez, and Zhang Weili is literally one of my favorite fighters. So it's going to be a great time no matter what. And I'm just really excited for this one.
Yeah, and I have seen Suarez fight a couple of times at this point, and every time I've said from like I want to say like maybe 3 or 4 fights back that I've always thought that she's had champ potential. So I am extremely excited about this fight. She is a very, very technically proficient wrestler and grappler. Zhang Weili, of course, dominant as she has been. We know that she can be defeated. Will it be Suarez that can do the job? I don't know. I mean, really, you talk about ring rust on Suarez's side. I mean, Weili might be dealing with a little bit herself at this point. She's been somewhat inactive. We talked about that on the show before. She's not been consistently defending time and time again now recently. I mean, a win over Yan Jianan certainly is impressive to me, considering that I think that Yan is. I still think that she has champ potential herself, but that's really been it for a little bit of the recent memory. So both of these ladies coming off of some decent stretches of layoff here. It's really going to be who's going to be able to get their game plan going first, in my opinion.
100%. And I'm really hoping it's going to be my girl Weili. So
yeah, and I'm pulling for happy. Suarez. I like Zhang Weili a lot. I'm also a huge fan. But I'm all about the shakeups, and if it's going to be somebody, I'd like it to be Tatiana Suarez. But that comes with the very big caveat that she's got to stay healthy thereafter, because it would just be travesty if she deals with injury or other health issues,
vacates, and
you just then throw the division into turmoil, and then what was the point even of getting the belt in the first place, right?
Right, exactly.
So hopefully she can stay healthy, and I'm pulling for her. I am Tatiana Suarez is my pick on this one.
All right.
Well, now, like I said, the drop off is quick and sudden when it comes to this card. So your featured fight here is Justin Tafa and Taliesin Teixeira. Teixeira is a Contender Series guy, recent Contender Series guy, right?
Yep, he was on last season. Big dude, 6'7", of course. It's massive. It's ridiculous, and he also knows how to throw kicks. So it's going to be very impressive. Justin Tafa really just doesn't have the skills to be able to compete here. Even if he wanted to wrestle, it's not like his wrestling isn't dog ass itself. But Teixeira, I think this will be a really good performance for him. And honestly, with Justin at 7-4, if he's 7-5 after this, I mean, you can't really think that he's going to be here, which is hurtful to say that right after your hometown card, you're about to get removed. But
yeah, and I mean, this is a prime example of what we were talking about in the breakdown of Saudi Arabia. I mean, couldn't be more clear. You have heavyweights that are getting cut off of their performances on that card, and now you've got heavyweights here where you've got a Contender Series guy in the featured fight against a dude who very well could be cut after this fight as well. So they are cleaning house at heavyweight, trying to cycle people in and get this division to a more entertaining state. Hopefully Taliesin Teixeira can be somebody who ushers that in, because I mean, we're definitely needing it. And, a guy like that with all of the stats, as you just read, I mean, his performance on the Contender Series was pretty damn good. Come into the big show and show it. Do better than Jonathan Deniz.
Facts. Yep.
So, I mean, I'll pull for the guy, but again, this comes with an even huger caveat here that these guys, when they're on the Contender Series, they fight one way, and coming into the big show, it doesn't always go how you would hope it would go. And Tafa is a much more experienced fighter, even though Teixeira is 7-0.
Yeah, I can hear what you're saying, but I don't know if the experience that Justin has is going to play a factor, because he doesn't fight any different in any of his fights. He does the same thing, and it doesn't often work, as you can tell. I'm pretty sure he was like 6-0 when he got here. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it would be very unfortunate, as you kind of alluded to a little bit, with this being a hometown deal for Tafa.
Stay home, dude. I mean,
yeah, just down the street. But no, I mean, his brother just had that odd situation in the last Australia card with the leg
Volker.
lock. Yeah, with Walter Walker, exactly. The leg lock situation, that was the verbal submission. Yeah, so hopefully he can turn the tides for the Tafas, but I wouldn't be so sure of it.
100%.
All right, moving on down the line. Jimmy Crute versus Rodolfo Bellato. I mean, Jimmy Crute is, I think, does pretty well at home from what I understand, but he is a decent little dog here. I mean, not crazy, but, he is the dog.
Yeah, so I had to double check and make sure this is the right dude. The only reason that I had ever had hope in Ihor Potieria, I know this is oddball, it is because about a year ago, the last time this Rodolfo Bellato dude fought, Ihor Potieria put him on the canvas and the ref just did not stop the fight. Like it was almost like Ihor gassed himself out by punching this dude in the face so much. Like it was that bad. And then the third round comes around and Ihor gets dropped and the ref steps in early. So that was the only reason I ever thought Ihor was good. So the fact that this Bellato dude made Ihor Potieria look decent, I'm just saying there's no way he's going to be any more better. Like he's been off for a year, ring rust again. We can throw that out there. But like Ihor Potieria stepped up to light heavyweight and put you on your ass, dude. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Crute's been one of those guys that has like, I've always thought he had like potential. Like he's got like the dynamics of a dude that should be more successful than I think he has been at times. This should be a fight that if he really is about it, and again, as I said, I think he does pretty well at home. So
yeah, he's never lost at home, I'm pretty sure. But
yeah, so
wow, this is actually pretty crazy. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Last matchup lost to Alonzo Menfield. Matchup before that, draw to Alonzo Menfield.
Right, that's why that fight took place. Yeah.
Before that, lost to Jordan. I don't know who this Jay Hill is, and then lost to Ace.
Jamal Hill.
So
Jamal.
Oh my God! No way! This fucking guy, Jimmy Crute. Like, he's riding a really bad streak right now. So
there you go.
Yeah, but he's never lost at home, so the streak could be broken.
And really, this kind of goes to the quality level of this card that we were talking about. You know what I mean? Like, you've got the dude who's on this kind of rocky road himself, going up against Bellato, who's not, somebody that you're necessarily thinking big things of, coming into the fight at the very least. So this is where the territory gets a little bit murky on this card already. And I mean, we're pretty goddamn high up on it. So
not much more I got to say about this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to tentatively go for Jimmy Crute on this one, just because I think that he's primed for a bounce back sort of deal. But, and really the draw with Menfield it warranted the rematch. So obviously there was enough there for it to be close enough to make that a case. So, he can drag these fights out. I mean, he can do his thing. As I said, I've never thought that he was like, I've always thought he was one of those dudes that like had all of the tools for it, but never was able to kind of put the puzzle together. Hopefully he can do that in this fight.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you really hope that this dude can win us some money. I mean, plus 140 at home and you've never lost. You got to come through for us right now because Bellato, I'm telling you, this dude, it was embarrassing how bad Ihor was whooping him in that first round. So either way.
Jimmy, do it for Australia, my guy. All right, moving on. Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado. Prado out of Argentina. Argentina been graduating some decent fighters lately. I think there's probably something there, but
but to note, he lost to Jamie Malarkey. So that
never looks good.
I mean, you're 12-2, and one of the losses being a unanimous decision to Jamie Malarkey. I mean, you might not be that great, but
for sure. Yeah, and I think that we were talking about it in the Discord, and I think you made a very good point that Matthews was one of the dudes that had insane betflation in his last fight. Like, right? Wasn't it?
No, that was Tom Nolan.
That was Tom Nolan. My bad. Yep. Okay, so then Jake Matthews. Who was his last fight? Was it the That was the one. Oh, Phil Rowe. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, this is another one of those situations. I mean, you saw the the candy cane going on there. You know, he's got a legitimate candy cane.
I mean, but losing to Michael Morales, I mean, Matt Semmels, but whatever this dude's name is, I don't know if that's
Semi the
necessarily
Jedi.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a great loss, but you know, Michael Morales, whatever. You didn't get finished by him, so there's a no.
Yeah. This record doesn't really scream like inspiring, but that's really kind of the theme of what we're going for with this card. Sadly, I mean, there's not a lot to like latch onto with this card. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I really feel like we're kind of having the Christmas tree a little bit here, but it's mostly because you're getting a lot of checkered records, and it kind of makes a lot of these like pick'ems just by nature. You know?
Yeah, 100%.
So again, I'll go with the hometown guy with this one. You know, go do it for Australia, Mr. Matthews.
There you go.
All right, Jack Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos. Jenkins had been doing better after his injury, right? I mean, he came back and got a win after his. He's coming off of a win over Herbert Burns. That's, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, if you look at his last 5, I mean, he's only had the one loss, and that was due to a pretty nasty elbow or shoulder separation.
No, the leg kick. He had a hole in his leg, didn't he? Or was that Jack Shore?
That's Jack Shore. You keep mixing up Jack Shore and Jack Jenkins.
Yep.
But Jack Jenkins is the dude. He went down kind of awkwardly. He kind of planted on his arm, and I think either an elbow or a shoulder separation. But came back and got a win over Herbert Burns. But you know, like I said, that doesn't necessarily carry all that much weight. And then Gabriel Santos is, you know, I mean,
Lerone Murphy, David Onama. I mean, it's like they're decent losses that these people have, but I mean, they're just the people that have lost to the good people that we're about to watch. So
yeah, I don't know what Australia did to deserve this card. And this is in Sydney. I mean, like Sydney is like a populous city. I mean, like it's, you know, an international.
It's at our time too.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, they are. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Well, that's I think kind of normal for the Australia cards, though, right? Like they usually do go on American time for them. And I guess for them it's not as bad because it's like early morning for them.
Yeah.
But So, but either way, it's just I don't know why Sydney is getting done like this, but they are. It really feels like with this card, they're stacking a lot of the hometown guys that they're hoping can become the next wave of, you know, names from the region. And a lot of these guys need to win these fights in emphatic fashion to become those names, but they're not there yet. So the name value is rather lackluster.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can get behind that. This next fight, I think, is, you know, you're talking about betflation. Yeah, Tom Nolan was a minus 1,300 in his last fight, and I think he lost by indecision. Borishev.
Oh no, he won the fight. He just right. Yeah, he won the fight. It was just not like it was a much closer fight than we had anticipated.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, listen, people want to talk about Tom Nolan didn't look that impressive in his last performance, whatever you want to say, but are we going to act like Borishev has looked anything but ass? Like,
I don't buy that. Borishev didn't look terrible in his last fight. Oh, did we lose Chase? See, Chase says some shit like that, and then just immediately zooms out of existence over here. The MMA gods were not jiving with that take. But while we hopefully work out Chase coming back here, see if he can regain his consciousness. Yeah, I mean, you know, a win over Yontop in a fight where Yontop was, I think that was the most recent one where, he was coming in overweight, right, and was bringing the fight to him. Yeah, I think that that Borishev has been looking pretty decent, honestly. I mean, now granted, he lost crazy handily to Chase Hooper. That's just going to be what it's going to be because Chase Hooper is becoming the man. But all right, Chase has rejoined us here.
Been
There he is. Hello.
Corrected. Yeah, let's not act like Borishev has not been anything but dog ass in his last performances. So, like the fact that people are questioning Tom Nolan, who's 8-1 against the dude who's been like, he's not just lost; he's lost pretty bad. Like, so
Well, what I was saying while you were in the void there was that I mean, he did beat Yontop when Yontop came in overweight, right?
yeah, that was the last fight. I actually forgot about that, but I'm still not impressed because we know James Irontop is pretty ass as well.
That is true, but the other side of that is the other major loss that he has was to Chase Hooper, who is becoming final form Chase Hooper. So I've got faith in Borshov in this one, man. I think that I like this fight for that reason. I'm not counting Nolan out by any stretch. I mean, obviously there was a reason he was such a heavy favorite in that last fight. Did not impress all that much. It was a lot closer of a fight than it needed to be because of the price tag. But I guess there's also a reason that he is plus money right now. So if you want to take that dog, that is certainly a live one.
Yeah, I think this one is this is Australian Jalen Turner is what we coined him. So have some faith that he actually pulls through and it's not a fraud. So we're good.
All right. Well, I will take that, and I will stick with my safe favorite on this one, and we'll see what happens. But if he does win in emphatic fashion, then I will go with the Australian Jalen Turner going 100%. Forward.
There we go.
All right, Wang Tong versus Bruna Brazil. Of course, we know that Wang has or had a lot of steam coming in. Had a really nice knockout in her first fight. Lost her last fight, I guess via submission, but after being rocked pretty badly as well to Fernanda. But I don't know. This is one of those ones where, like, based on that, it really depends on, to me at least, how Bruna Brazil is going to be approaching this fight.
Yeah, I was gonna like Bruna Brazil is a fighting nerd, so there's always some hope deep down that maybe they're just gonna figure something out. They'll cook up a secret plan that she'll be able to implement, and I would love to believe it. But Wang Tong in the stand-up is pretty damn legit. Like she can get in a rhythm where she's just bouncing in and out, dropping some pretty good shots, mixing in the kicks. I would hate to see her flop this bad and lose to Bruna Brazil because, I mean, what's next for her at that point? Like, she had aspirations to go rematch Val after, so if she loses to Bruna Brazil after getting destroyed by Gabriela Fernandez, there's just nothing left for her. But I would love to believe that Wang Tong could come out here and put on a striking masterclass. That would be really cool to see because she's fun.
Yeah, and that also is the other note from the Fernandez fight is that she was looking pretty sharp before the tides turned. So her striking is nice, and if it can stay on the feet, then it should be decent for her there. But she did get caught in that fight too, so it's not like she's bulletproof when it comes to taking shots.
100%.
So, yeah, we're gonna have to really see what ends up happening in that regard. This could be a little bit of a wild card. I'd be a little bit careful about putting money down on this thing, even though she is a huge favorite in this fight. She was a huge favorite in the last fight too. And we saw
factual.
So the Alexandre Topuria fight has been changed. Am I correct, or is this the correct fight now? This is Colby Thickness is the.
I think this is it.
Okay, is this what it got changed to? I guess.
Oh, I didn't know it got switched. I think this is what it's always been.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was mistaken. I thought that there was a switch up in this fight. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay. Well, either way, then this is the brother of Ilia Topuria, of course. We all know what Ilya's been doing lately. So this is is he the younger brother, I believe?
Yeah, I mean, he's 29. Ilya's only 27, 8.
Okay, then maybe he is the older brother. All right, fair enough. Then I thought he was younger, but either way, I guess there's a lot I don't know about this fight. So enlighten me. I mean, what about Mr. Thickness? Do you know anything about him besides him having a very funny name?
No idea about either of these dudes, other than him being related to Ilya and being representing Georgia rather than Spain. That is interesting to note. But I think the odds, maybe it is a different fight because the odds will be showing if it was the same fight that had been sitting up there for a while. But like Topuria was open at like a -600 or something. I'm pretty sure this is a quota. They're going to give him somebody they know he can beat because Ilya wants his brother in the league. I mean,
Yeah, name recognition goes a long way in this sport. So,
yep.
yeah, I would think that tracks. So yeah, I mean, I probably pretty safe money on Taporia in this fight, regardless of who they're going to put him up against. But thickness is 7-0, so there's nothing to say that he couldn't be somebody who could make something happen. Well, I guess we'll have to see with that one. But I like I said, I think safe money goes to the last name over anything else.
100%.
All right. Now we're getting into the early prelims. Jonathan McAuliffe versus Kevin Jousset. McAuliffe is a dude who was on the Contender Series this last go around as well, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And Jousset
Yes.
is a dude who's been around for quite some time. So, but he is fighting out of France. So what do you make of that?
Well, I actually think it's key that you noted that he's been around for a little bit, because when he fought Brian Battle, he had only had 2 UFC fights before that. And I always thought, like, as soon as I remember hearing that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the easiest work for Brian. He's way too experienced. And Kevin Jousset, being on a 2-fight win streak and being shot up to Brian Battle, I really do believe that this is an easy lock of the night. Like, this is going to be his get back on track, because they're going to give him a can. Like, he was never supposed to be fighting decent competition anyways. After 2 wins in the UFC, a sub in a decision against San Kanan, it's like, Brian Battle, we should have known he was going to mop you. But Jousset, I think, is going to go ahead and win this one, probably by decision, because he doesn't seem like no killer to me.
I mean, calling my dude McAuliffe a can off the rip, my guys. Harsh words.
I mean, I'm not in context to everything. I mean, if you're a dude who it's your first fight, listen, I'm sorry, you're going to get the can term sometimes. Like, if you just got big shoes to fill. If you beat Kevin Jousset with how likely I think it is that he walks away victorious, then you'll get some respect. You will not be a can. You'll just be the dude who beat a dude that I thought wasn't a can. So
fair. And that's certainly the way to change your perception, is go out and win your fights.
Exactly.
So yeah, but no, I would agree with the overall assessment, though. I do think that Jousset should come in here and make this look pretty simple, I would hope. This should be a classic case of exactly what we've talked about a couple of times tonight, where guy coming in off the Contender Series just isn't at the level as a guy like Jousset is at.
100%.
But on the reverse of that, the next fight is Rongju versus Cody Steele. Now, I think that this is the exact opposite over here. Rongju is a dude who's been around for a long, long time, 25-6, versus Cody Steele, who was, if you recall, the dude who was so goddamn scary on the Contender Series that he scared his opponent out of showing up to the fight at all.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's going to be detrimental to his career, is because, like, he has this stigma, like, Cody Steele might be that next guy. I mean, if he's scaring people out of the arena, I mean, someone has some tape somewhere that shows he's doing something crazy. But with expectations like that, those are the worst thing to have on a career, is because Rongzu might come out here and just use his experience, and then now you're Cody Steele, who's 7-1, who wasn't as good as we thought. Like, so
that certainly could be the case. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be like the craziest thing on the planet if that was the case. However, based on the performance that I did see out of Cody Steele when he did get an opponent on the Contender Series, I think that he is just a solidly well-rounded guy, because he is known for his wrestling ability. Like that, he's one of those guys, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit based on the Sergey Pavlovich assessment that I had said, but he's one of those guys that like has a strong wrestling base, but was like using his striking more so, and his striking was nice too. Now he could go to his wrestling and use that like to his advantage, because he is proficient in that regard and will use it. That's the difference between him and Pavlovich. It's like, he's not one of those guys that he has it in his back pocket, just doesn't have to use it all that much. No, I mean, like, he will use it. So I think that there is potential for Steele to be one of these guys that actually gets the job done coming into the organization off rip.
Rongzu, you said this dude's been around for a little bit. Dude, he's 24. When the fuck did this dude get here? What the heck?
Yeah, no,
25-6 at that young, like that's pretty crazy. I'm not gonna
well,
lie.
yeah, I mean, but because he's one of those dudes that's been fighting a ton in other organizations,
Oh,
but yeah, another road to the UFC guy.
the last fight that he was in. Okay, this dude was actually whooping. Um, he was definitely whooping the Chris Padilla, and Chris Padilla hit him with the slicing elbow, and it caught him right on the eye, and that was
Yeah,
like, and he
I
went
don't,
like
I don't
what?
think he was whooping him though. I mean, I think it
I
was
th-
a, I think
I
it was a,
want to say that was 2-0 or whatever Rongzu, and he was blessed that he landed an elbow right on the dude's eyeball. Like it, shout out to him. He did get that win. But like if you look at Rongzu before that, this dude's riding a pretty good win streak in his debut.
It's all road to the UFC guys, though, bro. I mean,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm talking about when it comes to that. Like, we talked about that fight on this show, so I'm gonna have to go back tomorrow and go find the episode and re-listen to what we said about it and what our assessment was at the time. I'll keep you honest on this one, but
Okay.
really, if you look at it from that perspective, though, that's the deal. It's like you're fighting a lot of the road to the UFC guys. The region just isn't as developed when it comes to full-on high-level mixed martial arts, and we saw a lot of that, especially on that event, because if you recall, that event had multiple road to the UFC winners on it. I believe it was him and one other guy, and then I think another dude who had also been a part of the competition or like an earlier winner or something like that. So there was some good representation of the show there, and I think maybe one of the three of them got a win. So
Yeah.
so I would I'm pulling American Muscle on this one. I'm thinking that I'm sticking with this assessment.
I can get behind it. It'll be an interesting one. I'm really hoping Cody Steele lives up to it, because with the aura that he's gaining, I mean, you better get out here and get a convincing win to back up for that dude being so scared, you know?
For sure. Well, speaking of scared fighters, you got Anshul Jubli taking on Quillen Salkeld.
It actually is pretty crazy, because before I actually looked, when I see his name and his picture, I know who Quillen is, because he was on the Contender Series and he put up a crazy performance. And I'm pretty sure, did he knock the dude out or did he sub him?
I believe that he was one of those
No,
submissions.
no, he got a decision.
Oh, he went to decision? Oh, shoot.
I feel like he mopped his opponent. But anyway, before any of that, before I remembered who he was,
must have been a different Aussie with a mustache that got a nice submission then.
Right. Well, I was, believing that Anshul is a live dog, because if you watch his last fight that happened a while ago, unfortunately, he was winning. He was doing a really good job against Mike Breenan. Mike Breenan eventually was able to get inside his head with the dog barking and finish the fight. Mike Breenan was then cut after that. And Anshul Jubli has signed a new fight deal. Unfortunately, now that I understand who Salakid is, Jubli's done. Sorry.
Well, I mean, going back to what you were just saying as far as the assessment of the Breeden fight, Jubli is a very technical fighter, but it gets to the point of being almost robotic. He's one of those dudes that he takes the training a little bit too seriously, to the point where I don't think that he is able to be very creative. And I think that the performance based on what happened in that fight, of course, getting barked down by Mike Breeden, certainly does not help his case as far as being like a real killer in this sport. However, if he can come in here and get his way, then there is some potential for him to maybe have some of a chance here. But I don't think that a robotic performance is going to do him any favors against a dude who's going to be a little bit more dynamic in Salkeld.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think my assessment originally about Anshul and what I believed he was able to accomplish in this matchup, I think that is all squashed, because I do believe, Quillen, he's pretty good. So sadly, Anshul, but like I said, you just signed a new fight deal, so don't even worry about it.
Well, I worry about it.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens there. Yeah, I'm going for Salkeld on that one. And then finally, to start the evening off, we have Hyung Sung Park versus
Nurmagomedov
Turmendembarel, Mr. Shaman.
Yeah, this dude is pretty fucking lit. I don't think I'll put money on him again, because he looked pretty pitiful in his last performance, but he is the only Mongolian we have. So, if the UFC wants to keep him around, they know that they got to give him a performance or an opponent that he can have a performance against. It is kind of interesting that the Australia card opens with a Korean and a Mongolian, but I guess nobody's going to be sitting down waiting for this one to start anyway. So just get it out the way and go for it.
They're going to be lucky if they're going to have any people in this arena basically up until the main card.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like this fight. I think that this could be entertaining. I liked Turman Dembrell. I thought that he fights like he wants it. You know what I mean? Like he definitely goes in there like he wants to win a fight. He just is a little bit wild and somewhat sloppy. So I hope that maybe some of these Mongolian monks can, take him back down, get his meditation a little bit underway, align the chi a little bit there to bring him back down to earth and kind of hone in on the skill set a little bit more so he's not throwing so wild. If you can do that, then there might be something for him here. But I agree, this is probably a fight that I would stay away from betting on or take the favorite and small money to put a straight on this one, honestly, if you're going to do any kind of betting.
100%.
So that's it. I mean, we'll see how this plays out. As I had said about this and every other card that potentially does not look that great, any card could be amazing, right? Every card has the potential to be fucking awesome. No one necessarily thought that Macau at 3:00 in the morning was going to be as good as that was. Turned out to be amazing. This could be something like that. So let's hope that this weekend we get something worth staying awake for. At 3:12.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm always excited for fights. And like I said, my girl Zhang Weilei is here, so I cannot be too mad.
Exactly. You're going to get saved by the co-main and the main one way or another. And as always, myself and the Vitz King will be doing a watch along on this channel, Yama. That is the Yama Show here, youtube.com/@Yama Show. You can watch us there. You can watch us on Twitch, Kick, and Trovo as well. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
They can find me streaming the watch along on YouTube at youtube.com/@CPSmalls. If you want to pop by on Twitch, if you don't have the YouTube capabilities, I'm going to be on twitch.tv/creativeplay. And then Twitter, you'll catch me having a good time at Creative Partin, Partin. I know that's a lot of different things to throw at you.
There you go. Follow him on everything. Make sure you do that. And of course, we will be back next Monday to break down each and every one of these fights right here on this show, Last Week's Fights. So until then, everybody, we will catch up with you then. New content out on the channel currently. Just did a stream yesterday about the Bryce Mitchell breaking down the entire Bryce Mitchell Ark Insanity podcast. Chase was in the chat for some of that. That was a lot of fun and a lot of wackiness. So check that out. Hopefully I'll have a video out this week. Perhaps if not, there will be a episode of Yama coming out after 3:12. So keep an eye on all of that. Chase will probably have some predictions out. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Get predictions out. I'm going to update the women's pound for pound list. And after this week, we'll obviously get some more women that I can throw in there and give you guys some updates on.
There you go. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. And we will catch back up with you very soon. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. And as always, fight on.
Game.